Alrighty, so this is episode 5, and we are virtually sitting down with my friend Jorge.
Mm-hmm.
Jorge, you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell the people what's good.
Yes, my name is George, or Jorge, for the more Spanish verse. I basically am a 29-year-old AC technician living in South Florida, trying to navigate my life and hold my shit together the best I can in the most legal way I can. And I find myself here this morning, sleep deprived and hungry, and
Yeah, it's earlier than most of the recordings that I have done. We had actually planned for a 9 a.m. session, and it's currently 10:41.
10:41 a.m. So we're on schedule, is what I'm basically trying to say. We're doing really well.
I mean, if we're running on Hispanic time, then yes, we're early.
We're way
ahead
of the curve right now. The sun is still out, so it's a success so far.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so I want to talk to you just because you're so easygoing. So we're not friends, but I met you through Christian, who's my boyfriend, and I don't know, you just gave me a really good vibe. So I was like, he would make for a great conversation, and I'm sure he's a lot to offer the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, someone has to think so.
Sorry, man. That's how that feels. So how have you been? How are you feeling with everything going on? I know you said you're kind of trying to keep your life together as best as you can with duct tape and within the law. So
and Goya flavor seasoning. Well, it's not so much anymore now. Now I'm making my own for obvious reasons. But
that's funny.
It's such a funny question of how are you doing, especially during a pandemic. Especially during the current state of the world with all the political stuff going on. And it's one of those things that you have your work stress, you have your personal life stress, and then you have your external world stress, and all these things kind of come together to root against you. And I'm one of those people that I try not to let things get me down the best that I can. I'm not always super successful at that. Sometimes I'm in my den at 3 a.m. and I'm just listening to Frank Ocean by myself, and I'm oh, maybe I'll order Taco Bell, and I'm that is not healthy human behavior. But
you won't even go outside to get it, right? I think you're telling me
I won't
earlier.
even go outside.
Uber eats that shit.
Oh, Uber eats that shit. I'll pay $37 for them to bring me $15 worth of Taco Bell.
Goals.
plus a tip. Plus a tip. But I always, as cynical as I am, as sarcastic as I am from time to time, I still try to be positive in my own weird little way, because it's the only way I know how to operate, because I've had things affect me and I go to that dark place, and it's super easy for me to be there. And in some weird part of my lizard brain, I like being in that place because I feel something,
Okay.
Yeah. Even though it's not necessarily the best thing ever, I feel something, because there's a good portion of my life where, due to the events that I was experiencing, I just didn't feel anything. I became a shell, I'm very good at fabricating emotion, and I know when I'm with people, I'm supposed to be, this is how I'm supposed to feel, this is how I'm supposed to respond, and I'm very good at fabricating that. But, I
very
found
calculated.
myself, yes, I sometimes found myself, being really good at it until the point where I felt I could be in a room full of people, and I just felt empty,
Damn.
And with the state of everything going on right now, you have protests going on, you had the pandemic. Every day you hear something new coming out of the government that's not necessarily things that I agree with or that, I can support. But I like to think that as an almost 30-something male, that I'm handling it the best that I can given the resources that I have. So
Damn, I have so many questions.
Yeah, way
I
to
feel
start
like-
off strong.
That's the way I like to do it. Yeah, I have a couple questions because like I don't know you that well, so you've already opened up a little bit of direction for me. Okay, so let's start with this. So it sounds like you kind of sit in a tug of war with your mental health, right? The way you feel. You said you've been through some things that kind of forced you to numb yourself out. And that you feel something when you do go to that dark place. So it's usually somewhere that's comfortable for you. So with everything going on with this pandemic, did you see yourself slipping in that direction and then force yourself out of it? Like, and at what point did that happen for you?
So here's the weird thing about the pandemic. I always like to err on the side of caution.
Okay.
I always like to be on the forefront of, let's practice things safely. Let's do things the best way we can, not for just for yourself, but for everyone around you, your community, the people who you know. The pandemic has been really weird because I have been in a position, fortunately, that the pandemic didn't really affect me like it has so many other people.
Right.
I know people who have lost their jobs. I know people who have lost their houses. I live in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and there's a Starbucks across the street that closed down. And that Starbucks, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. They're going to be fine just because the one location in Fort Lauderdale closed down. And to be honest, there's another Starbucks less than a mile away. So it's kind of like,
why
all
they
right,
closed that one.
Exactly. So I was very fortunate. I worked for a company that, they told us, we're going to give you X amount of time if you need to take it during the pandemic that, you'll still get paid, basically like a sick leave. And I've had to use some of it. I had to quarantine myself for 2 weeks when the pandemic first started because we had a bit of a scare. I also quarantined myself for 4 days last week because I had come in contact, my best friend had come over, and then a few days later he tested positive. And he's a doctor who works in a hospital. So I quarantined myself, did the quarantine, did the COVID testing. Was not comfortable. Kind of sucked. But
sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're fine.
Christian mentioned yesterday to me while we were in the car that the testing, the way that they're doing it is different now, that they no longer stick a Q-tip down to your canal. They just kind of swab it in your nose. Was that your experience?
So the test that I had taken, and it's so weird because I hear conflicting information all the time.
Okay.
My girlfriend, when we first, we were going to get tested because we had come in contact with our friend who tested positive. She had ordered these kits online where it's like a vial that you kind of like spit into. You do what's basically a Zoom call with the doctor. You open the kit in front of him. He's like, this is what you're going to do. Seal it, send it in. The test that I had taken, I had to go to a park that they had, medical booths set up. It was like a 2-hour wait. It's so funny because I was actually listening to one of your episodes of your podcast while I was in line.
Great.
And I felt so awkward because I was laughing and everyone around me is like just panicked. Like, oh my God, do I have this thing that could possibly kill me? And I'm just like, oh, McDonald's, But the test, to be honest, it wasn't that bad. I did have to do the one where they stick, it's not like a Q-tip. It's actually like a small tube that they had to shove in one of my nostrils. And I felt so bad because there was a little girl in front of me. She was maybe 3 or 4 years old. And they had to test her. And of course she was freaking out. I'm sure she was scared seeing all these tents and military set up because I believe it was a National Guard set up there.
Really? That's intense.
And I sat down and the guy's like, look, it's 5 seconds. He took the tube, he put it in my left nostril, and it felt like when you're at the pool and you just inhale a bunch of water. And I started tilting my head back and he put his hand around the back of my head and kind of like not pushed it forward, but kind of like held my head in place so that I wouldn't move back. And I was like, oh, this is
intimate.
This is the weirdest that a man has ever put his hand on the back of my head, I would like to imagine.
Now you know what that feels like. Congratulations.
I was like, I've been doing this to people my whole life. But, at the point where I was about to start reacting to it, like from the feeling,
Huh.
it was already over.
Okay.
So
cool.
it was quick in and out. He's like, hey, your test results. Unfortunately, this was during 4th of July weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me, he's like, hey, test results usually come back in 3 or 4 days. It might be longer because it's 4th of July weekend. And because at this current time in Florida, like our cases are spiking. Like, I think we're like number 1 in the country among like Texas. And I think there's one other state that I can't remember, that our cases are just going up dramatically compared to everywhere else.
Yeah.
Shout out to Florida for doing Florida things, like,
Hey.
you know, number 1 in COVID, number 1 in alligator attacks, number 1 in sandwiches.
Really?
The pub sub is, I'll fight someone over the pub sub. But
I know a lot of people who would put their life on the line for a pub sub for sure.
I'm going to send you a picture of my slides. I have public slides that I paid way more than I want to admit on the air for. But anyway, so got the results. Of course, it came back negative. I'm super thankful for that. And I got like 4 days off of work, which was super cool.
Mm-hmm.
But because of, you know, my company's stance and they're taking progressive measures, you know, COVID, and I, like I said, I err on the side of caution. So it's so weird to say that COVID has kind of been the least of my worries.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Nice. I'm a little caught off guard because you said slides, and I thought you meant like a presentation. What's it?
Like a projector. Like I have the clicker, and
yeah.
Like, oh, this is slide 1. This is the first Publix I ever went to, and when I fought the guy outside because of a parking spot incident, and this is the other Publix that I fought someone in the parking lot because of another separate incident.
It changed your life.
I
have to say though, legit though, you know they're serious about their sandwiches if they create an actual container for them. Have you seen them? You have, right?
Oh my God.
Marvelous.
It's like watching art happen. I can only hope that I love my firstborn child as much as I do the moment when they hand me my sandwich. And that fucker's got some weight to it, okay? It's at least the one that I order. Like, I order the ultimate boar's head, spinach, tomato, onion, oregano, and I think that's it. I don't know why I'm talking about sandwiches now. I'm also hungry. I didn't eat dinner last night or breakfast this morning. So I'm
This is culture. This is for the people who don't live in Florida. I think there are other states, right, who have Publix.
Maybe some I know there's one in Tennessee, and I think Alabama, possibly Georgia, but I know Alabama and Tennessee, I think for a fact, have Publix. Sure. Not as widely available as they do here.
But the North hasn't really.
Yeah, the North and like what I deem the proper South, like Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, they don't have Publix. I lived in New Orleans for like 8 years, and they didn't have Publix, and I missed Publix more than I did certain relatives of mine. That's a fact. So
I'm impressed that you didn't go for like the generic like chicken tendy sub. Like that's where most people go to. So I'm impressed by your sandwich decisions.
It might be kind of controversial. I love the chicken tender pub sub. I do, with a passion. I'm a huge advocate for it, but it's not my necessary go-to.
Should that be the sandwich everybody tries for the first time?
Yes, because I feel Publix fried chicken is unmatched. It is so good.
It is.
Like,
kind of spicy. And if you suffer from like heartburn issues, make sure you pop like an antacid in there.
Which I do. I preemptively drink Pepto-Bismol. Like, it's no joke. Like I keep it in the fridge like I do like a chaser if I'm drinking. You know, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to have a fajita tonight. Yep. I take like a shot. And the thing is, I actually like the taste of Pepto-Bismol.
Nasty.
It does not bother me. So I'll just like swig. My girlfriend's like, you don't even use the cup. Like, you open the top and then you just take a swig or two. And then like 20 minutes later, you'll go take like another swig. And it's like, well, I'm not doing it because I love Pepto-Bismol. It's perfectly, fine. But I'm doing it so that I'm not killing myself later on that night or the next morning.
We might need like a Pepto intervention after this podcast.
Yeah, if Pepto made slippers or sandals for the layman, I would probably cop those as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, at least now I know what to get you for like the holidays.
Yes, anything Publix or Pepto-Bismol related is pretty good. It's a pretty safe bet with me.
Do you have a thing for the letter P, by any chance?
Anything for the letter P? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Pepto-Bismol, Publix.
Oh, I didn't even make that association.
That's what I'm here for.
Podcasts, pupusas. If you don't know what that is.
No. Pupusas? Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, okay. I was about to say.
I just thought I didn't hear you and then my brain processed it after.
Pan de bono.
Pan de bono.
Which is always good. God, I would stab someone for a piece right now.
Also gives me heartburn, but also worth it.
Yeah. So welcome to the #1 heartburn podcast, currently available in the States, Ukraine pending.
Absolutely. One from mental health to fucking heartburn and foods that will give you heartburn.
It's a wide variety. You know, it's so funny because a lot of the podcasts that I like to listen to, some of them do have a formal structure, but my favorite ones really don't. Yeah. You feel like you're in a room and you're listening to a regular conversation happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm not necessarily a fan when things feel too scripted, because I feel like you lose a lot of that personal touch. Yeah. So with your podcast, that's why, you know, when I first started listening to it, I was like, this is right up my alley. And I also want to say just how excited I am, and how, you know, we've had limited interactions, you know, me and you, you and I guess. But it's so funny because of the few times we've hung out, I was like, okay, it makes sense that you're with Christian. So for a little bit of background, Christian and me have been friends for over a decade easily. I want to say I first met him in like 2005. Him and his older brother. I'm not going to throw his name out there in case he doesn't, you know, want it out there. Stefan, yeah. Stefan Mantine. Social security number 241. No.
Doesn't have a dad.
I met them both at the same time. I love them both. Like, I consider them to be my brothers, which is weird because Christian being the younger one, I don't know if it maybe speaks to a level of my maturity. And it's not even maturity, because then that would implicate that, that would insinuate that Christian is less mature, which he's really not. Christian is wise beyond his years. Yeah. He's a very well put together individual. And he's someone who I always kind of connected with, because he was the type of friend that if me and him didn't talk for 6 months, 3 months, what have you, he would reach out. He'd call me. It's like, hey man, just call and see how you're doing. Yeah. How's it going? How's life? You know, and still to this day, like, he does that. I'll call him. We don't always speak as frequently as I'd like, or I'm sure as he'd like. But whenever we do link up and we get together, it's like no time was lost. You know?
It always seems very seamless.
Yeah. It's a very low pressure situation. I don't feel like I have to be anyone other than myself around him. He's definitely one of the people who I consider to be like one of the greatest connections I formulated over the years, and consistent connections too, which is very important to me, because for a lot of relationships, friendships, I always felt like I was the one putting the most effort into like sustaining it, to where like, oh, if I didn't call you, if I didn't text you, I would never hear from you. And that was one of those things that you know, that eventually takes a toll on you, but he's definitely been a good friend to me. And when I first met you through him, it was so funny because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to put you on blast.
That's cool.
You were older than Christian, correct?
Barely.
Okay.
Yeah. He has a late birthday, August, and that's why I'm older. But yeah, we're pretty much the same age.
Okay. For some reason, I thought there was
I'm definitely a little, mentally at least, I think I'm definitely wise in some aspects that he may not be, and but vice versa. I think he definitely puts me in my place sometimes.
You guys complement each other very well, I feel, because one of the things that I was most excited about when you first told me you were going to do a podcast, and when I first heard the first couple of episodes, the Witty Titty Podcast on Spotify, is I feel like it's so rare, or maybe just rare in my life. Maybe I'm not in the right circles, or the circles that I'd like to be in, to find Spanish people talking about mental health and advocating for therapy. I'm in therapy, you know, helping sort my stuff out. Yeah. And I feel like everyone could use it. And it's so funny because I know like if you bring up the concept of therapy, especially to more traditional, older fashioned Hispanic people and people of different cultures and stuff like that too. It's not necessarily Spanish people, but it's very predominant in the Spanish community. It's like, I'm not crazy. I don't need to talk to a therapist. And it's like, well, that's not what therapy is. Like,
right.
Like, well, what's some person going to tell me about? No, it's like therapy isn't going to be the solution to your problems. Mm-hmm. Therapy is kind of just going to give you the tools you need to handle your stuff better and to understand yourself better and why things affect you how you do and why you carry the baggage that you do and things that are just so dormant sometimes, you know, even in my therapy sessions, things that have come up where I was like, wow, this one thing that happened when I was 8 years old that I kind of completely forgot about or just brushed off as a one-off instance is still like lingering in my mind, and it affects me in A, B, and C ways today.
Yeah.
So just, I think it's a really great thing for the conversation to happen, and kind of, I'm very much an advocate of normalize therapy.
Yeah.
You know, normalize, you know, getting the resources you need to help you sort your stuff out, because, and, you know, I don't want to speak to your upbringing or anything like that. I know in my household, you know, my father, ex-military, didn't have much of a childhood, had to start working basically as a child to support 7 brothers and sisters. You know, we're Spanish. We love big families.
Baseball
and
teams.
Yeah. And he didn't have much of a childhood, I feel. And that definitely reflected in me and my sister's upbringing. You know, my father was kind of stern with us, you know, and I would love to know, like, how would my father, for instance, be if we normalized the concept of like mental health and being helped with it, and where you could be, or how different would your life be if you had these tools available to you at a younger age? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so I look at my mom, right, and she's 57, and obviously standing outside looking in, I mean, I can see a lot of the things that affect her as a person from the way that she was brought up as a child, right? And I mean, my grandmother treated my mom like shit for most of her life. You know, she didn't receive a lot of love from my grandmother. She was constantly being put down. She started working at a very young age to try to get herself and her sister out of the house, away from that toxic situation. And my mom always took the brunt of everything. I think my mom has like 4 other siblings. As you can tell, my family's not very close. I don't know them very well. But yeah, so she had 4 other siblings, and anytime any one of them did something wrong, my mom would take the brunt of it, and she would get her ass beat every now and then. So I can see that anger. I mean, my mom's a beautiful person. She has a great heart, and she almost reminds me of a child, because she was almost forced to grow up so quickly without having the opportunity to be a kid. So she did like the face value things of being an adult, right? Getting a job, earning money, being able to give your mom money to sustain herself, having kids, getting married a few times. So at least in their culture, right, that's what being an adult is, kind of taking care of your own. But because there was such a huge neglect to the mental being, I can see all of that reflected now that she's older. And it makes me sad, because I think she could have lived a much better quality life. A lot of the decisions that she's made, you know, even raising me and my sister, knowing that she's not a bad person, I know it's because of the way that she was brought up and how she failed, but she didn't have the opportunity to, you know, realize, okay, this is what's going on in my head. And these are the things that I do to cope with these things. And these are the things that I'm doing that also hurt me in the process. So without having that opportunity to kind of speak to someone about it, not even having like a stable family enough to have those conversations, you know, obviously put some kind of a damper in her life and her quality of life. And I think, to me, that's super upsetting, because you don't get 2 chances at it. You get one life. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just me wanting to just let people know that, like, the weird shit you do behind closed doors is okay, right? The way that you feel is fine. The way that you're coping, although maybe it's not healthy, you're not the only one doing it, right? So like, let's find a way together to kind of get you out of that habit. And to this day, I deal with things with my mom. Like, my mom has changed so much over the years. I moved in with her about 3 years ago, and I hadn't lived with her since I was like 8.5 years old, 9. And I moved here when I was, I think, 21 or 20. Yep, 21, I think I just turned. And so it's been a process. And I mean, I've gotten into, and not even arguments because I don't stand up for myself, but like, my mom has fixed my drawers for me. And that shit has made me want to flip tables. Like, the smallest things. And, you know, it's just kind of better understanding like why you feel those ways. So it's just, I don't know. And it feels good to have these conversations. Obviously, I'm not a professional, but I think being able to sit with somebody who maybe you don't know very well, or who you do, who's your best friend, and sharing these kind of intimate feelings is super important. It just makes you feel better. Just communicating is such a huge form of therapy, at least for me.
Yeah, no, I would definitely have to agree. It's so funny because I hear a lot of the, I don't want to necessarily say the narrative, but when I talk to some of my friends, especially male friends, because there's like this, I feel like the male ego is such an interesting thing, because the cliche is men will say, oh, women are so emotional and da 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 da. Well, some of the most emotional people I've met in my life are men, myself included. It's because I feel like there's that societal pressure of like, you're a man.
Yeah.
You have to be a man. You can't let the world know how you're feeling, and you have to be tough, and you have to be stern. And I feel like there's a difference between understanding what's happening with yourself, and kind of having this, as much as I don't like this term,
say it,
because of how I don't like this term because of how it's warped. You know, there's certain terms that are thrown out there now that are used to say something when they're not really what it's meant to be. So the term I'm not a fan of is toxic masculinity.
I was going to say hyper masculinity. Okay.
I 100% believe that toxic masculinity is a thing.
Yeah.
Because especially in Hispanic households, you're told at a young age, men don't cry, men don't do this, men don't do that. And I feel like that's very regressive, because over years, you know, I feel like you're suppressing a part of yourself.
Absolutely.
And you do it so much, like anything else, it becomes a habit that you might not even realize that you're doing it. Or even if you do realize that you're doing it, you don't realize the long-term effects it has on you. You know, my father, I can tell, is definitely a product of this. My father's very old world, by the way. So for a little bit of context, me and my sister are first generation born in the U.S.
Okay.
My mom and my dad are both from El Salvador.
Okay.
My father got kicked out of school, I want to say 2nd or 3rd grade. My father grew up very poor. I mean, very poor, in El Salvador. And the story I remember him telling me, or I remember, you know, my aunts and uncles telling me, is that my father was kicked out of school because, you know, my grandmother had saved up and was able to buy my dad like a notebook and like 2 pencils to go to school. And just imagine the situation they must be in financially if buying a notebook and pencils is kind of like a strain to do.
Yeah.
And he went to school, and I guess one of the kids in the school like took his notebook and like threw it in the dirt. You know, my dad's very much from like the country, you know. And because of that, my dad stabbed him with a pencil. And
your dad stabbed the kid with a pencil? Okay.
Yes, because he took his notebook and kind of like threw it in the dirt and kind of like ruined this, and it's like the one thing he had, you know, for school. And
I mean, I've stabbed people with pencils before, so
I've been stabbed with pencils, and I have stabbed people. You know what? Let's just say with pencils.
It's a generational thing.
Let's just, you know what? Bleep that part out. What is the? What is it? What is that thing they call it when the statute of limitations has passed on certain events? So I feel we could talk about them, but. So because of that, my father, you know, not being in school, having to support his brother and sisters, was forced to work. And my dad used to work in the coffee fields. And when he was it's going to sound funny. I'm going to say of age, but in El Salvador, they didn't really care at the time because they were basically on the brink of a civil war happening in the 70s and 80s. So my father basically became a child soldier. He was in the military very young. And, you know, going from not really having that childhood because you have brothers and sisters to support to going into the military, which, you know, there's none of that bullshit in the military, let alone a Central American military for a country that's kind of tearing itself apart at the moment.
Right.
And it's so crazy. When I was young, my dad would nonchalantly tell me about like the stuff he would see and the stuff he had to do and the stuff he experienced. And I can tell that it's some part of that stays with him, as it would with, you know, I feel anyone.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, have you ever talked to anyone about this? Have you ever expressed how, you know, you didn't really have the option to be a kid and kind of have that, what is it, that veil where the real world stuff doesn't apply to you yet? Because, you know, when you're a kid, you have, you know, if you do something wrong, you have that little bit of levity of, oh, well, you know, he's just a kid. He's still learning.
Right.
You know, the punishments are a little bit less severe. Things are a little bit more understandable when you mess up. And I wonder, I was like, did you ever have that? Did you, as a man trying to support his family and forced into the military to only do, I can only imagine what, some things he still hasn't told me, won't tell me. Maybe I just haven't asked about it. And I do. And me and my father, now we have a good relationship. We didn't always. We definitely didn't always. But I wonder with someone like him, you know, how, if society didn't tell him, suppress all of your sadness, suppress all of your fear, because you need to be a man. And society was like, what do you need help with? What is affecting you? Like how that would not only have affected him, but how that would have affected my upbringing. If it would have been more understanding, if it would have been more, you know, my parents were very much like, first of all, it baffles me how some people tell their parents they're bored. It's like, oh, I'm bored. I was like, if I told my parents I was bored, I was like, well, go fucking clean the kitchen, you know, like go
find something
do something. They
do.
smack me in the head and be like, go spend the rest of the day icing your head or something, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so funny seeing like generational differences.
Yeah.
But like I said, my parents were very old school. My parents, when, you know, I was definitely the more rogue of the two of us between me and my sister. She was very much on the up and up. She would rebel every once in a while, especially when she was getting into her teenage years. But, you know, I was definitely the wild card. So like my parents, you know, grew up where, you know, we would be punished, it'd be physical punishment. You know, they would, you know, smack us or get hit with a belt or with a shoe, you know, something.
Yeah.
And my parents used to kneel us on rice if we were bad. So they would take like raw rice. And I know some Spanish countries do this.
There's some Spanish kid out there who's like, fuck me too.
He's like, God damn. He's like, oh gosh,
not
finally
again.
Someone. First of all, let me
quiver a little bit. Let
me preface this by saying not jasmine rice, not couscous, not, you know, no, long grain white rice. They would throw it on the floor. We usually had like tile. It would never be on a carpet because that wouldn't make sense. And then they would just kneel us on it for an extended period of time. How long that time was, to be honest, I think I've suppressed those memories so much. It could have been 10 minutes. It could have been 45 minutes. I don't know. And then the kicker is when you would get up, you had to dig all of the grains out of your legs. And I know to a lot of people, especially people, you know, of a younger generation, or maybe they didn't have that sort of upbringing, you know, with strict disciplinarian parents, that I say, oh my God, that's such abuse. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean,
but we made it.
Yeah. Look at me. I have raging debt, you know, but my car is paid off and I have a pretty decent apartment, I like to think. But, you know, I would never do that to my kids.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Well, it's the only way they knew how, right?
Exactly.
You know, what they were taught and what they saw, and until you're shown that there's a different way, you kind of just roll with things. For fortunate and unfortunate for some. So I get that. So while you were talking about your dad, you know, not being able to almost experience that piece of childhood, right, where you maybe make a mistake or you do something, and instead of having the ability to be like somebody being, oh, okay, you know, he's a child, you know, it's okay. Just made me think of like how intense his like fight or flight instincts must be, or how messed up they might be, right? Especially if he's used to like collecting all this trauma, not really understanding how to react to something maybe more minuscule than others. Did you have that experience with him where you found that maybe he just like got angry instantly or reacted in a way that you were like, oh, like why would you act that way?
Yes. So it's so funny because growing up, like I said, I was the more rebellious child.
Yeah.
And which is so odd to me because I have a much closer relationship to my parents, I feel, than my sister does. I also still live in Florida. They live 20 minutes away from me. I go like every weekend to visit them. Like if you ask me right now at the current state of my life at 29 years old, this is the best relationship I've ever had with my parents.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But it took 29 years to get here.
Gotcha.
There was a time in my life, you know, my father had I feel for most of my life always struggled with drinking.
Okay.
Now, my father he wasn't the type of person where he would like get drunk and just like hit us for no reason. No. Okay. My dad, he would kind of drink, and I can only imagine it was just, that was his best coping mechanism that he knew how, whatever stuff he has going on. But there was a time in my life, not even so long ago, not that long ago, where I was living with my parents when I first moved back to Florida, and every day my dad would come home drunk. Every day. And I hated it. It's one of those things like seeing him like that every day. And my dad had been hospitalized before for drinking too much. Wow. And multiple times have told him, you need to stop drinking or you will die. And I get it because it, you know, addiction is such a terrible thing because, and I know it sounds like a blanket statement, but I feel like it's so terrible because addiction affects everyone differently.
Yeah. It's a family thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. And I just remember always hated seeing him like that. And my father knew that. So what my dad would do is he would just drink he has a work van. He would just go in his work van. He'd go to, you know, my dad was never the type of person to go to a bar and sit there and drink for like, no. He'd go to the liquor store. He would drive back home and he would just drink in his car by himself. Very destructive behavior, obviously, because if you're drinking by yourself in a parking lot, there's a lot of things you need to, you know, sort out through. And as an adult, I feel like I have that comfort of like, okay, well, you're no longer raising me. I am my own person. So I feel like I have more, not influence, but my words mean more because now it's not a son talking to his father. No, it's two adults talking to one another.
That's powerful. That's true.
And it's not so much that because, you know, it's strictly, and I cannot stress it, in Spanish upbringing is like, at least my personal experience with them. Yeah. You do not talk back to your parents. You do not even take tone with them. And if you do, there's usually consequences.
Even if they're wrong. Yeah. You just shut up and take
Even if they're wrong, you're not going to tell them that they're young, that they're wrong when they're younger, because trust me, you're going to be kneeling on dinner and, but now that I'm older, I started voicing to my father, like, why are you drinking? And I remember I had a conversation with him one day, a very powerful conversation that kind of sticks with me. And I was like, okay, let me ask you something. I was like, why do you drink in the car? And he had this kind of like blank stare on his face because I feel like no one's ever really talked to him about his drinking. My mom, of course, would tell him all the time, stop drinking. My parents are still together. Stop drinking. But of course he's like, oh, you know, that's the wife, whatever, da, 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 da. They've been together for so long. Yeah. I was like, why do you drink in the car? And he goes, well, I don't want to drink in the house. And I was like, well, why? He goes, because I don't want you to see me like that. And I was like, but I see you when you come in. I know. Like, I'm the type of person where it's like, I would see my dad drink so much, even if my dad had a little bit to drink, I could immediately tell.
Yeah.
From how he was standing, from how he would talk, from just how his facial expression was, his body language.
Yeah.
I like to think if there's one person aside from my mom who cannot be fooled in terms of if my dad's been drinking, it's me.
Yeah.
And it made my life living with them very, very hard.
It sounds uncomfortable.
Saying that because I would also feel worse for my mom.
Yeah.
Because I could go into my room and put my headphones on and kind of block that out.
Right.
But she's the one who has to deal with it up front. You know, she's the one who has to handle that.
Yeah.
And I was always closer to my mom than my dad because she was the more compassionate one.
Mm.
So I always have like that, you know, lenience towards her because she's the one who I could kind of rely on for, you know, support. Not so much when I was a kid, because like I said, when they raise you, they're raising you. They don't care if you like them or not.
That's true.
Once I started getting to be an adult, you know, I definitely, you know, we bridged that gap of she was the more, you know, supportive one of everything. So
yeah, you're able to communicate with her a little bit more easily than him. And you know what? It's just you like explaining that experience just makes me think of, because I know you said your mom obviously had it harder, and I'm sure she did because she was an adult and she had to take care of you guys and also her husband, right? She must have felt very alone. But even in that time, at least from the way you're describing it, I feel like you already had to kind of take on a parental role for yourself, right? To be at a young age and still have to be checked in enough to worry about things like, oh, okay, is he drinking? He is drinking. Okay, like, is something going to happen? Should I, you know, always be like on edge to make sure
100%,
you know, that you were there to like handle shit.
There were days where I knew if he was drinking and he'd be at the house, I would like go out, like pretend like I was getting like a glass of water or something. Yeah. And I would just grab his car keys. Or grab his wallet or something. But then that would sometimes lead to bigger conflict because he would always assume that my mom would do it. And then he would kind of blow up on my mom about it, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I did this. But it's so weird, the contrast of how my relationship was with my parents up until now. So for a little bit of backstory, like things have been going, it's so weird to say this, despite all the things going on right now, despite Corona, 2020, I feel like, because I'm so incredibly lucky, has been a pretty good year for me.
That's awesome.
I believe it was this year. I finished paying off my car. I bought a house that my parents actually live in. Wow. Because they were staying in this like small apartment that they had bought. My dad was in a car accident a few years ago, not drinking related, luckily. But
just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, he was in a work vehicle and like a truck just T-boned them completely at fault of the other driver. Yeah. So he had to have like a surgery and he had like a settlement. And with that, they were able to buy like this small, you know, like 2-bedroom apartment. And I mean small, like a couple hundred, you know, maybe like 700 square feet. And with that, they were living there, but the place was too small for them and definitely not in the best neighborhood, you know? So I had been saving up some money. I was telling them like, hey, let's save up some money because there's no reason. And this is another conversation I had with my dad. I was like, there's no reason you can't have the things that you want in life. And it's so weird for a child to tell their parent that. Yeah. Because I would tell him, there's no reason you can't have a house. There's no reason you can't have, you know, let's say you want a newer car. You know, if you want internal happiness, there's no reason you can't have that. You're putting yourself in your way. And this goes back to the drinking. And we had that conversation one day. And a couple months later, you know, he would call me more. I noticed his demeanor changed. You know, from what I hear from all accounts, he hasn't been drinking for a while. And, you know, they're living in the house that I bought. And, you know, I go there sometimes just to hang out with them for a short time. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I've been here for like 2.5 hours. I got to go. Like, I can't do this anymore. But yeah, we do have the best relationship we've ever had. And it's so weird because I had to take that parental role. Yeah. I had to, especially during my upbringing, I became very self-sufficient because I learned that I couldn't really rely on my parents for much of that support that I needed.
Right.
And that reflects in my current life. I'm very self-sufficient now, and I'm a very introverted person,
Yeah, same.
I would very much have like 2 or 3 people who I'm really close with come over to my place. Like, I'll buy food, I'll make food, I'll get drinks, whatever you want. I don't want to go out. Like, the idea of going out to like a club or a bar is so beyond off-putting to me because I'm like, why? And it's so weird because I just made the connection. Well, not just made the connection because this did come up in therapy one time. That's why I don't like drinking. I'm not a drinker. I'm not a drinker because I grew up seeing that, and it just was so off-putting to me that I wanted no part of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I love whiskey. I love bourbon. I'll pour myself a nice cup of bourbon. I can sip on that cup for like an hour, and then I'll get another one, and I can sip on that cup for like another hour. But then I reach a point where I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. And I have absolutely no problem stopping there.
Right.
I'm not the type of person to want to get drunk. I've never been that person. Teenage years, pending. Definitely there were some times.
Just blackout. I think sometimes it's just because everybody else. Don't get me wrong.
No, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
is it?
Yeah, I like to think so because even as a teenager, I was like, I don't really like drinking, and then everyone's like, let's get drunk tonight, and I'm like, all right, let's fucking do it.
In the moment, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because I don't remember if I was drunk around one of Christian's birthdays, because I had just like quit my job at McDonald's at the time, and it was. So, okay, I'm going to tell this story. I don't know if he knows the story. I don't know if I've ever told it to him or not. But it was his birthday. They were living at the house in the Trends neighborhood, the big house.
Okay.
And Sam was still with Jeanette. And, their house was the house that everyone would hang out with.
The party house.
The party house. That's what it was. So I had just recently moved back to Florida. I want to say this was like 2009 or so. I was barely starting in my career, so I didn't really have, a lot of experience. I couldn't find a job in my career, so a friend of mine got me a job at McDonald's. I fucking hated it. It was by far one of the worst jobs I've ever had in my life. And till this day, I think back at it and I was like, look at how far you've come because you hated your life. I used to work night shift, which means I would go in at like 10 o'clock at night, get off at like 6 in the morning, and then some days, the next day, go back at 10. So sometimes I felt like I was going to work twice in one day. So this one day I was scheduled, and it just so happened to be Christian's birthday. And they were having a big party at the house because I don't know if it's either Christian's birthday and Sam's birthday or Sam's birthday and Stefan's birthday. It's like really close together. I feel like it's one of the two. I might be wrong on that.
Sam and Stefan. No, it's Sam and Christian because we go to some restaurant and that they both really like, and I don't know. But yeah, it's them too. Anyway.
Outback. They go to Outback Steakhouse. Huge proponents of Outback Steakhouse.
The other one. With like the honey, they put out this toast. Has like cinnamon in it with the butter.
Oh, are you talking about a Longhorn?
Peanuts everywhere.
Longhorn Steakhouse?
Yes.
Oh, Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Roadhouse. There we go.
Texas, really?
Yeah, those motherfuckers love Texas Roadhouse.
I'm gonna have to call him after this and be like, listen, man, what's
going on?
Talk to me, baby bird. But so they're having a big party for him at the house. Of course, all of our friends came over because that's the cool thing about me being friends with Stefan, his older brother, which is all of me and Stefan's friends were Christian's friends as well. He would hang out with us most of the time. He would be one of the crew, and then he'd like go upstairs to play video games. And to be honest, a lot of times I would go with him because that was more up my alley. It was downstairs. Like, yeah, we're gonna play beer pong. I'm like, fuck that. I want to play Fallout. And there's this big party. I was scheduled to work at McDonald's that day. That's the whole point of the story.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm just not going to go in. I'm just not going to go in. I want to be here. I want to be here with my friends. I had just moved back to Florida. Yeah. And I hadn't seen them in a while. And we moved around a lot. So the fact that I was back on my own, I was happy to be there. And it's funny, the shift manager calls me. He's like, hey, you have any idea when you're going to be here? And my response was, never. No. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm not coming in. He goes, what? I was like, yeah, I'm not coming in. He's like, you can't do that. And I was like, well, I'm doing it. He goes, well, did you get someone to cover your shift? And I was like, no. He's like, can you? And I was like, no. It was just constant. And I heard him. He must have been so baffled.
He was defeated.
And he's like, I can't believe someone would do this. And then I forgot what someone maybe at that party was like, oh, you sure that's a good thing to do? I was like, listen, if the bridge I'm burning that I need to be concerned about is the McDonald's? On Military and Palmetto Parkway, like a lot of things have gone drastically wrong in my life.
So funny.
So, yeah. And I quit my job to hang out with Christian on his birthday and hang out with everyone. So
I'm sure he appreciated it.
I'm sure he doesn't, but that's okay.
I think he's told me a story about that day, but I'm not sure. There's so many, and I have like a pigeon memory, so I don't know.
Christian is so funny to me because he reminds me a lot of myself, and I feel like his mom hates that because me and him are very similar, and I felt like she thought that when I would hang out with him, I was kind of like molding him into myself. I was like, no, he's like this. I'm just here for the ride, Yeah. He's witty when he says things. Sometimes he'll just drop like one line, and it's just the way that he says it that it's the funniest thing in the world to me, and it makes me die laughing. Mm-hmm. And he was into a lot of the same things that I was. So that was, I'm going on a rant about your boyfriend and how I knew him longer and love him more. But
maybe you should be dating him.
Maybe, I don't know if he could handle it, because I have a ravenous sexual appetite.
Well, I mean, you practice now, right? From that test. So maybe you can show him some things.
Maybe.
Your COVID
I'm
test.
like, dude, it's just 5 seconds. Just put my hand on the back of your head. I'll buy you breakfast. Come on. Let's go to McDonald's.
I'll get you some
some hotcakes.
You want to go on a ride, boy?
No, I love him. He's great. And that's the thing. It's like you can tell, and I'm sure listeners can tell. Like I'm very comfortable with like myself, and I guess you could say my sexuality. Like I have no problem seeing a man be like, that's a good looking man. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I want to sleep with him and get married with him. I can make that distinction, you know. But I can be like, yo, that's a good looking dude, something like that. I'm very comfortable with myself. So there's a series of photos somewhere on the internet. I'm gonna have to send them to you, where I would break into their house, and a lot of the times Christian would be sleeping, and what I would do is I would like get in the bed with him, but like ever so stealthily, so like he wouldn't wake up.
That's hard. He wakes up for everything.
And I would position myself, like I'd put my arm and my leg around him, and I would kind of just wake him up by like whispering into his ear. And there's so many disappointed pictures of him waking up. Where him basically wearing me like a backpack.
Yo, he hates when people wake him up. I wish I was there to see that. Please send me those pictures.
I'm gonna have to look for them. I'm gonna send them to you. I know he knows what I'm talking about. He loves it.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's so different from the rest of his family. And I don't mean it in like a negative or a positive way. I feel like he was like, I don't know, man. I mean, obviously he's from a different dad, but like, his dad's not responsible for the person he is, for sure. Well, kind of, but not the good stuff, I feel.
Definitely not. I had my fair share of run-ins with him as well. Some stuff. So I listening to that episode with you and Christian, I really sympathize for him, because he is such a great person. He moved out on his own, has his own apartment, is working, has a fucking great car, a soon to be famous podcasting girlfriend. And I'm like, you did it despite everything. Yeah. You did it despite everything. You really made it. Like, I remember the first time I went over to his apartment, and he was kind of like, yeah, it's, kitchen's a little bit old. I was like, no, dude, like, you have no idea how big this is.
Yeah.
Because you're making it on your own, and you're doing your thing, and you're self-reliant, and it takes some people longer than others, and that's perfectly fine. But I was like, you were doing it. Show me the big ass spider that sleeps outside of the bedroom. Like, it's, I was like, that's your big ass spider. Like,
that's your pet.
That's your thing, and so funny. I remember I went over there one night and I slept over. It was during the shrimp incident. I think you
Yo,
like
Uber
ordered some
Eats.
food or something, and then they like
That's-
fucked up your order, just canceled it outright. And I
Yeah, it
felt
was
so bad
Red
because I think
Lobster.
you had just gotten back from work or something,
Yeah,
and you were
I
like
was fucking
starving.
hungry. Yeah.
And it's so funny because me and Christian went out to eat at that diner. I can't remember what the name of that diner is. He had like this massive burrito that I think had like mashed potatoes in it. I forgot what I ordered, but I remember asking him, I was like, yo, should we bring something for Whitney? He's like, no, she'll probably get something on her way home. You know, I don't even think I had met you yet. I think that was the first time I met you.
Was it? That's embarrassing.
I can't remember. But then I could see it because you looked just like me, in which I can tell internally you were having a complete breakdown. And I was like, oh. And then White Ferrari starts playing in my head by Frank Ocean, which is like one of the saddest songs ever. And I was like, oh no, like this is planetary devastation for her over this shrimp from Red Lobster that never came.
That was messed up. I think I was on a diet too, so like there were specific things that I could eat, and that shrimp was like one of the things I could.
That's why we didn't get you anything. Because Christian did say that. I do remember. He was like, oh, he's like, Winnie's on a diet. She can't just have whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's the diner that me, you, and Mia went to.
Yeah.
That one time. It was that same diner. And he told me, he's like, yeah, she's on a diet. She can't, she'll get something that's more in line with her.
Yeah, I couldn't have carbs. I couldn't have sugar. Couldn't have oil, nothing. So it was, I was really looking forward to those shrimp, and they never came. So
yeah. Good.
Yeah, I think I ordered it. It went through the Uber Eats driver, got to Red Lobster, which by the way was literally like 3 minutes from where we were. So I could have just gone up and picked it up. But
we went to Publix, shout out to the God, and then we got you a pack of shrimp and a potato that you and Christian fought about how to cook it properly for like 20 minutes. And I remember looking at this, and I was like, I'm so happy that I'm here for this, because I was smoking. I was smoking by myself. No other parties involved in the story were smoking.
Pretty sure we were all smoking, but that's fine.
Smoking crack cocaine.
Okay, we weren't smoking crack cocaine.
And I just remember having the best time. And it's so funny because that was not too long after I moved back here and I kind of started working and starting to get my stuff together. And just hanging out with Christian and having it feel like old times. I mean, I smoked and had a drink, and we were just watching like gameplay clips of certain games. And I just remember all of us like busting out laughing because we were watching. I don't remember if it was Mount Your Friends or something, or like one of those weird games or Gang Beasts or something. But, and I just remember I was like, this is it. This is what this feeling, if I could capture, like, capture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, this is the best feeling in the world to me because I'm genuinely happy.
Oh.
That's
awesome. Yeah, because, I mean, in the beginning of our conversation, you say, you have to sometimes worry about being calculated, right? Making sure that you are a certain person, you act a certain way to certain things when you're, in the outside world. So that's awesome that you don't have to feel that way when you're hanging out with them. So
yeah.
That's really dope.
Yeah.
Sorry, was it the videos we were watching? I don't know if you're going to remember, but at the end of every video was the guy was like, "Thank you, Dark Souls," or something like that.
Yes, it was. He was constantly referencing Dark Souls because he's dying constantly. But so no, it's so funny because I never thought I would have had that relationship with Christian because I was friends with his brother more than I was with him when I first met them.
Yeah.
And then that actually became the polar opposite as I got older and as Christian got older. Like once Christian got older and he was cool, let me be real. I can say this. It's my best friend and I love him and I'll do anything for him. If Christian called me right now, he's like, I need to borrow $600. I'm like, you got it, dude. Check your fucking Venmo. Like when I first met him, he was in elementary school. He was an elementary school kid. He was kind of shitty. He was kind of a shitty person. Like I remember one time I went over to their house so for more context, Christian and his family lived in the same neighborhood that I did. I mean, literally walking distance. I could probably throw a water bottle from my place to his place. Like, wow. And we lived in the same neighborhood. And I remember one time I went over and I went to go knock on their door and I was going to go hang out with Stefan. And Christian answers the door and I was like, hey, Stefan, he was like, yeah, he's upstairs. I was like, oh, okay. But he just kind of stood in the doorway. And then I was like,
Such
oh,
a dick.
he's like, I was like, okay, can I see him? Can I like come up? And then he goes, no. And then he closes the door, and that's the end of that story.
No.
That's the end of that story. I did not see Stefan that day. I just went back home.
Yo, he's so ballsy.
I don't know if you remember that. And that's what, and you know what the funny thing is? The whole way home, yeah, I was a little bit pissed off, but I respected it so much because he said it with such conviction. And later on that day, I laughed so hard about that. And then ever since that little moment, I was like, okay, I see you. I know who you are. And it was like, it was history in the making.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
There are moments now that I experience with him that maybe I disagree with, but like he's just so like confident and stands his ground that it's hard for you to get mad. You almost like you're like, damn, like should I be like that? Like
there's conviction.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy.
He sticks to, and here's the thing: I have certain friends. I don't agree with everything that they believe in or things that they get behind, and you know, I feel like a lot of your feelings, whether politically or morally or ethically, are very in line with mine, which is why I feel like this is so easy talking to you. That being said, I still relish the opportunity to speak with people who have differing opinions. And, you know, I don't feel like you have to agree. Like, so, for instance, there's certain people who I'm friends with where we just straight up do not agree on certain things. Now, don't get me wrong. I consider myself to be a liberal person.
Okay.
And I don't mean liberal in the sense of like how you hear liberal in the media.
Right.
I mean, if you were to ask me right now, what are my beliefs? Okay. Racism is fucking stupid to its core.
Right.
I will never be down with something like that. You know, restricting anyone's rights, women's rights, trans rights, gay rights, LGBTQ rights is fucking dumb to me. I don't believe the government should be involved in every single thing that you're doing. I believe you should, you know, I'm a proponent of legalization of marijuana. I believe college education should be something that everyone has access to. And it's so funny because people are like, well, how are we going to pay for it? I was like, listen, we're the most powerful country in the world. I refuse to believe that we can't find a way to do it when our military budget is like 3 times the next 3 countries combined. You know,
it's so strange to me that as a country we spend so much time like inflating our ego. We're the best country, we are number one, and then when it comes to solving issues that we're experiencing internally, we're like, I don't know if we can find a way. Well, I mean, if we're going to be the best, we got to be the best at everything.
And it's not necessarily so much like we have to be the best at everything, but I feel like it's more so we should be setting the standard for the rest of the world, because I really do believe there is a right and a wrong side of history. I think that 100%. If you discriminate against people for something as trivial as race, the color of their skin, or, you know, religious upbringing, you're on the wrong side of history, because it's like, really, we share this planet together. And it's so funny because, you know, you hear the stance, the Black Lives Matter stance, the stance that I'm behind 100% of the way. And then people are like, well, all lives matter. And then that, I cannot roll my eyes hard. Like, I can roll my eyes so hard that you can hear them. Okay? Because no one was saying all lives matter until people were saying Black Lives Matter. As a kind of rebuttal, as like a way to almost like silence or like muddle the message. Like, well, all lives matter. It's like, yes. I think the best example I hear is, if your house is on fire and you're telling people my house is on fire, I need help. And then someone's like, well, all houses matter. Like, well, yes, but your house is not on fire right now. Like, it's one of those things of like, if you really did believe all lives matter, I don't think you would have a problem saying Black Lives Matter.
I think, unfortunately, I think, you know, we're the United States of America, but we're also very individualistic, right? So to the core of it, I think before there was a movement, people just gave a shit about themselves and their family and their land and their rights, right? And as long as nobody was fucking with them, it was cool. And you know, when this movement, which has always been an issue, racism across the board, people have been getting shot for absolutely no reason for quite some time. But obviously there was some peak, right, where it just caught the attention of a lot more people because it was documented, right? We were able to see it. And I think there was like 3 cases of this within a span of like a week and a half, right? Yeah. So I think it was just a peak
disproportionately of it. As well.
Absolutely.
Like, and then it's weird because one of the first statistics people bring up, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
They'll say, oh, well, you know, white people are killed at a higher rate than people of color. We're like, yes, because the majority of the population is white. So of course the numbers are going to be higher. But if you look at the percentage of the population versus the percentage of the incidents that happen, it's extremely disproportionate.
Yeah. And then, so I've spent so much time because I'm in the midst of creating like a 3-part podcast surrounded around this. I wanted to wait a while so I wasn't writing like any coattail and I wasn't just trying to go with the trend. I think it's still something that needs to be mentioned and discussed amongst different groups of people. So I'm waiting some time, but I'm kind of working to put it together. So I've spent some time just kind of sitting back, trying not to get emotional about things and sitting and viewing conversations between opposing groups and trying to better understand why extremists have, on both sides, have the views that they do have and how the separation occurs and why it's so prevalent in this country that the division is something that's like written by the media, right? So I just kind of trying to make sure I'm getting all of my information right. Anytime I hear somebody mention those statistics, the first thing that somebody will say to defend themselves is that although African Americans make up 13% of the population in this country, that they are responsible for 50% of the crime. So to me, it's so strange to hear people like all of a sudden like know all their fucking statistics to prove their side of the story.
The statistics that are relevant to their point.
Exactly. Without looking at the whole picture, right? Yeah. And to be honest with you, I've gotten to the point where I've looked into this stuff so much that I'm like, why are we trusting statistics from a country that like keep shit from us in the first place? You know what I mean? Like we're trusting this organization, this body to guide us in the correct way when I feel like a lot of it's just manipulation. Politics in general, at least in my opinion, it's a fucking shit show. It's like a popularity
100%.
contest.
I forget who it was who said this quote, and it's just one of the quotes that I loved because I partially agree with it, and actually more majority it's like the government should be so small that you should be able to drown it in a bathtub. So
like that.
That being said, it's so weird because I don't understand, you know, my favorite adage is no one's born racist. You have to learn it. And, you know, I am not without my faults, for sure. I was very much a person like in my teenage years, but what I feel is important is growth and progress and understanding. Right. I was very much a person in my teenage years. You can ask Christian, you can ask his brother, that, you know, I'd be like, we'd be talking about someone like, oh, that's gay.
I still do that.
Or things like that. And it wasn't until, and it's sad that this is what had to happen. Yeah. One of my friends who was gay at the time, I remember saying that. And then he told me, he's like, hey, he's like, and he didn't, it was in a completely non-confrontational way, kind of how me and you were talking right now. He's like, hey, it's like, when you said that, what were you trying to say? And then I was like, oh, well, you know, I meant like, you know, it's dumb. It's dumb. He's like, but why did you say that instead of this? And then I realized I was like, I don't know. Because I was almost like conditioned. It was so normal.
It's natural. You don't question it because you've heard it's, you know, before. So.
And he, like I said, he wasn't confrontational about it. We still, you know, after that, everything's like normal. But then I realized, like, oh, like, you don't see the perspective at all times. Like, some of the terms used against, you know, people of color, trans people, people in the LGBT community, like, you don't realize some of these slurs that they've heard while people are assaulting them. right before they've been killed, while, they're literally being attacked. And then for someone like me to just use it nonchalantly in a way to describe something that even has nothing to do with it,
right,
I feel like is so radically unfair.
mm,
And then that's why I never understood the argument. It's like, oh, well, I'll say what I want to. I was like, yes, the First Amendment allows you the right of free speech. But I feel like we kind of have to all get together and say, okay, obviously things are broken.
yeah,
Obviously we can improve on things. And I feel like some of that comes from a lack of not wanting to improve because you are so set in your ways and you just don't care. Like, I have a coworker who, I kid you not, and I know his stances. He's very much a Trump supporter. And here's the thing, and I might go on a little bit of a tangent here, but I do not understand how someone can look at our current person in office, and I say that because I feel like calling him the president is a joke, how they can see this person, hear him speak, and say, that's the person who needs to be leading us as a country.
Yeah.
Because I don't get me wrong, I watch CNN, I watch Fox News, I watch MSNBC, I read Bloomberg, I read Politico. I get my information from various sources because I like to compare.
Right.
I like to have a wide net. I don't just say, oh, I'm just going to listen to this and this, because that's where I feel a lot of people fuck up, is they get all their information from the one source that they're used to or the one source that they like, not realizing that that source could be leaning you into a specific way. Because just listening to this guy talk at press conferences, I was like, clearly this guy has no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
Or he says outrageous things. And I was like, don't we deserve better?
Right.
Don't we, as a society, because it's so weird, because we had Obama as a president for 2 terms, Obama not being without his own faults, of course.
Right.
I can say that because I'm not one person to say Obama was the best president ever because he was our first Black president.
Right.
I feel like that almost muddles the message, because it's like, okay, I can be objective and it will have nothing to do with his race.
Right.
And in the same, like on the same path, look at our current president. And don't get me wrong, if Trump, when he started and he was in office, and he was like, oh, you know what? Let's see what we can do to get healthcare in college for people, things that I truly believe we can do as a country. And I'd be like, okay, great. But one of the first things he does when he gets into office is he tries taking trans people out of the military. Yeah. He starts trying to get rid of DACA. He talking about building the wall and all this stuff. Yeah. And hearing him, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
That's the frustrating part for me. Yeah. Because
he was a fucking TV host. Here's the thing. It's like, so just so people know, I'm an HVAC technician for a high-rise building in downtown Fort Lauderdale. Our apartments range anywhere between $3,000 to $10,000. We very much have like a higher-end clientele for our building. I do not respect money. And what I mean by that is, because someone is rich and they have money, that doesn't automatically mean I respect them. Because to be honest, I feel people conflate financial success with either intelligence or success as a person in general. And I feel like that's one of the most dangerous things you can do, because trust me, I'm around certain people all day, every day. This has been my whole career. Some of the dumbest fucking people I've ever met are people with immense amounts of money. Immense amounts of money. One doesn't necessarily have to do with another. Some of the smartest people I've ever met are people who are middle class, lower class, lower, and I hate using that term, middle class, lower class. But they put those groups out there. I have people who spend $7,000 on an apartment on the 30th floor who don't know that you're supposed to change your air filter. Yeah. Don't know how to turn on an AC thermostat. are calling because their tire is flat and they don't know what to do. It's like you drive a McLaren, like, you know, simple social things that you would think everyone would know. And I feel like people are like, oh, well, you know, he's a rich businessman. But the thing is, it's like, first of all, your family is rich. You inherit wealth. You know, he had bankruptcies, of course he does. But the thing is, it's just, you can even tell just before he even became president and watching the show, is like, this man is clearly a narcissist. He puts his name on everything. He had Trump Steaks, Trump College, which I think recently found out was like a major scam, and they're in like a lawsuit to like return money to students because they were like guaranteed job placement that never happened. And apparently their degrees don't mean much of anything compared to like an actual accredited school. This person is clearly a narcissist. I felt when Donald Trump was running, he ran with the intention of, this is good for the Donald Trump brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not because he necessarily has the best interest in the country, because to be honest, I don't really think he does. I think that the best interests he has are for himself and people like him, people with money.
Yeah. Yeah, I understood. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I understood the sentiment. Is that how you say it? Sentiment?
Sentiment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, it sounded like the donuts.
What? Entenmann's. Shout out to them. I'm not gonna lie, if you eat 2 of those, your foot's gonna fall off, but I do remember them being delicious.
The best fucking donuts. Anyway, yeah, I understood the sentiment because, you know, people were like, well, you know, he's a guy, he's a businessman, like you said, he has money, he's smart, you know, he understands how the real world works. But no, because he's not a normal, everyday, regular guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nothing about him is regular to me.
No, I mean, this man had a fucking TV show. And then people are like, oh, well, Kanye's running for president. Like, how crazy. Like, no, bitch, you just voted Kanye number 1 into office. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, God.
He's already in it. That's a whole other thing. But
if Kanye runs for president, I'm going to kill myself.
No, he's like on the works of doing it. He had like an official interview and everything. I don't know how far he's going to go, but
I don't know how far he's going to go. I don't know if he missed the cutoff for certain places or how that whole process even works. I'm going to be honest. I'm speaking mainly from a point of ignorance right now because I'm not going to, as well informed as I like to be, I'm not going to pretend like I know all the workings of what it takes to, you know, start a presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. But I don't know I think Kanye had like possible like criminal stuff in the past, and I know that in order to be, and don't get me wrong, I am not bringing that up in the sense of how people bring it up when people of color are killed by the police, because that's one thing that I also hate. Is they're like, oh, well, 6 years ago, you know, he stole a car, so he's not this angel. I was like, okay, so that means he deserved to die?
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm saying that because I do believe that in order to run for president, I don't mean it in that context. I believe you have to have any sort of legal stuff completely clear and, you know, sealed and closed, and you need to be basically, boom, above board. I don't know if Kanye has all that down pat. I don't know. I could not roll my eyes harder because I was like, there's no way that we can go from a terrible narcissist to another terrible narcissist. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I have a really long, confusing history with Kanye. I love his first 2 albums, maybe even the third. And then Kanye West slowly started changing into like he starting to believe the hype about himself. And then he felt like he transcended just being a regular human being. Like, Kanye West is no longer the Kanye West that went on TV during the Bush administration and was like, George Bush does not care about black people.
Yeah.
That is not the current person who is Kanye West.
So, you know what? I've heard that he fabricated this relationship with Trump, that he didn't actually support him. So even when he was like all friendly and wearing this hat, he actually donated like thousands of dollars to Hillary when she was running for president. That's what I've heard. I don't know how factual it is. So I don't know. So and if that is true, I could understand how maybe that would be useful for Kim Kardashian at the moment, because I think she was also fighting for
the release of someone from prison, I believe.
Yeah. She's looking into individuals who've been incarcerated, who were found guilty, who are actually innocent. And I think she was trying to get them pardoned, something along those lines. So she's been doing some genuine work there, which is great. She, that's not to say that I think she's an angel, but if that is what they were doing, that's a smart move. Again, not saying that he's equipped to be the president of the United States. I think it's still just like police officers. I think there needs to be a certain moral standard, ethical standard, coming into something like this, because you literally have the life of millions of people in your hands, right? So it's too important of a job to just like leave it up to anybody who wants it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame Trump for everything that's wrong with this country, because this country's been fucked up for some time. There have been plenty of people before him, who
the systemic issues with the country did not start when Trump went into office. I feel like they were just amplified.
Yeah, I think whether he wanted to or not, I mean, he was very vocal about certain things while he was running for president, and he's not dumb in that sense because he is a businessman. So he knows what people want to hear, and he'll say anything to get the popular vote, right?
Like a salesman.
Exactly. And that's what I think he really treated, like you said, that entire election as a way to market himself, to market his brand. And when he actually became president, he was like, wait, oh shit, like I genuinely won. And that's because he was playing the right people.
It was the biggest marketing scheme
ever. Yeah.
And
sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
What was frustrating when you were mentioning, he's making these decisions, or he says certain things where he wants to build a wall, he wants to get rid of DACA, he wants to put laws in place to take away from the LGBTQ community, but he doesn't know what he's talking about. And I was talking to Christian about this the other day, where he was, he told me, well, he's not responsible for everything. I was like, I understand that. I'm not blaming the guy for everything. But at the same time, if you are going to take up such a position as being the president of the United States, you should not speak on something that you don't know. Right. So if you're saying you want to get rid of something like DACA, and you're putting it out there that it's because DACA is a gateway for criminals to come into this country and destroy it from the inside out.
Yeah.
And that, we get things for free, and just kind of spreading misinformation of how this process works, that's very dangerous.
Extremely. Because I feel like a lot of people, maybe, and I don't want to use the term less informed, but I guess for some people, they look at it like, well, it's coming from the president.
Right.
It must be true. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, that's extremely dangerous, because then here's the thing. I don't want this to come off in the wrong way, because I am definitely a not Trump person in terms of our upcoming election. I'm very much like, I think that there is a regression that is happening in the country because he has been in office. And I think that's super dangerous, because if your whole message is to make America great, and you're doing all these things that are the antithesis of that, I think that's a problem, because now you're bolstering, you're uplifting your base. He knows who he's talking to. He knows exactly who he's talking to. Trump, when he speaks, he does not speak to the country. He speaks to the people who support him.
Yeah.
And, it's so dumb on how something as simple as like the attendance numbers at his rallies, or when he put Betsy DeVos as like the head of education, or, whatever her title is, and clearly someone who is extremely unfit for the position. Various people who were unfit for positions, and I read yesterday that he basically just pardoned Roger Stone, who is his man. And I was like, oh my, like, does no one else see what's happening?
Right.
Like, if Trump supporters are truly about the country being great and our democracy and what it's supposed to stand for, this guy is eroding all of that for the sake of him and the people who are like him. And it hurts because I live in this country and I've seen the great parts of this country. Our country is very flawed. All countries are very flawed, I feel. Most countries, at least.
Most countries, yeah.
And I'm sure countries like Finland or whatever, they're fine. They sheep outnumber the people. But I just say that. I'm sorry. I just threw that little jab in there. My best friend's wife is from Finland. And I don't know if you watch horror movies or anything like that.
I thought you said porn movies. And I was listen to my last podcast.
Squad.
But no, horror movies, yes, but not any recent ones. But which one are you talking about?
Midsummer.
No.
Okay. You should watch it.
That's newer, right?
It came out in the last 2 years, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Great movie. I don't like jump scare horror movies because I feel like that's cheap. I like horror movies that leave a psychological impact on me.
Was this the one that was kind of culty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the film takes place in Sweden, but because Sweden is like maybe close to Finland, I don't know geography, but I always throw little jabs at my best friend's wife. Like, oh yeah, it's like the whole movie is like a big commercial. When you see visit California, we're surfing and there's fucking grape fields here and wine and the celebrities are here. I'm like, yeah, Midsummer is just a giant promotional film for Finland, even though it's not even the same country remotely. But anyway, just to get back on point, it's so funny because I feel like there are so many different opinions of our country. Mm-hmm. This 4th of July, I felt like I didn't have anything to celebrate. And I'm not going to pretend like I really ever really celebrated 4th of July. It's just an excuse not to go to work, to be honest.
Just eat hot dogs and burgers.
Yeah, glizzies. I just don't. I'm like, I can't sit here with a brave face and like praise the same country who constantly reminds large sections of its population that it does not give a shit about you.
Yeah.
As long as certain people are comfortable. And white comfort should never come at the cost of people of color's quality of life. I have a very hard time. The protests happened next to my building.
Yeah.
Our company sent out an email telling us to remove rocks from the front of our building so they wouldn't pick them up. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, most of the protesters were peaceful. You always have those opportunists, of course, who are going to, loot and, do all that sorts of stuff. But I get it. I do. Because you constantly see people who look just like you being unjustifiably, treated and being killed. And the country's overall narrative is deal with it.
Yeah.
Be okay with it.
It's crazy.
And I can't do that. I can't see what's going on and say, that's why people like it's so one of the arguments that just it baffles me. It truly, truly baffles me. One of my coworkers said this to me. Mm. He's like, oh, the whole Colin Kaepernick thing was happening and he was kneeling. And I forgot who else had spoken up about everything. He's like, how is he oppressed? He has millions of dollars. It's like, no, you're missing the message. Mm. So you're saying poor people should be the ones on the forefront speaking, which they are. But who listens to poor people?
Nobody.
Who listens to underprivileged people? Nobody. Mm-hmm. Because they've been saying this stuff for years.
Yeah.
I was born in Los Angeles. We lived in extremely underdeveloped areas. Mm-hmm. We lived in Compton. We lived in Watts. I believe we lived in Long Beach. And I was fortunate enough that my parents decided to move to South Florida when I was still relatively young. Mm-hmm. And the Rodney King riots were happening.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, yes, there are people who do that, who go looting and all that. But to be honest, I don't care that they do that because I will never care more about businesses than I do about people. Mm-hmm. Fuck Academy Sporting Goods and Walmart because they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But you have families growing up without fathers, without brothers, sisters, mothers. You cannot get that back. And it's things like that that affect families and generations to come forever. And if
Yeah.
you were already in a position where you were starting at an extreme disadvantage and something else comes and just sets you back again,
Mm-hmm.
I completely understand the point of having the frustration of them not listening to you and being like, okay, we tried this your way. You know, it's like, oh, protest peacefully. It's like, okay, well, when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling and peacefully protesting, the country lost their mind about it.
And what's crazy is that Colin Kaepernick had a dialogue with a service member because he originally was sitting
Yes.
through the anthem.
Yes.
And that service member is the one who gave him the idea to kneel. So, suck it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that gets me so angry. Like, step outside of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And take the time to understand, at the very least, understand where somebody's coming from and why they are behaving the way. And that goes for both ways, right? Because I think both extremes are a bit crazy, and unfortunately, extremists are always the loudest, and that's who's represented in the media. So until people are willing to make the effort to find a commonality, nothing's going to change.
I feel like there has to be that acknowledgement, because it's such a weird of a concept to me that you can say something like all lives matter and at the same time turn a blind eye to when things happen that don't affect you personally.
Yeah.
And you kind of be like, oh, well, I'm fine. So why would I care about that? You know, I'm Hispanic. I grew up here in this country. I'm an American citizen, born and raised just like the person next to me. But like, what about when I was in 6th grade and what about when I was 6 in 1st grade and I heard my teacher using racial slurs against Spanish people? What about when I was in my early 20s and I got fired from a job because I brought it up to management that one of the employees was talking about how he wished he could shoot some of the Spanish people working on the property because they didn't understand him. And then 2 weeks later, I was fired.
Wow.
Where was all of that? Where's all of the all lives matter when things like that happen? You know, when I was at Home Goods with my mom and someone is yelling at her because me and her are speaking Spanish. Of course, I'm not about to sit there and watch that happen.
Right.
Because if people don't know me, and they don't, a lot of people, obviously, I keep a small circle. But I'm someone who was kicked out of middle school completely. They said, you can't come here anymore.
Holy shit.
2 months later, I graduated from a magnet high school with my high school diploma because I was eligible, because I'm not dumb. I'm just lazy. You know, I'm just really lazy.
Yeah.
I almost know 4 languages. And for you to sit there in my face and tell me that I'm the problem just because me and my mom are speaking Spanish in the middle of a store while I'm looking to buy sheets. That I cannot stand. That I cannot stand forever. I don't, you know, I try to respect everybody, but some things I feel are just not respectable.
Absolutely.
I hear people who make the argument of like, oh, you know, I'm a Trump supporter, but I don't agree with this, this, and this, and this. And I was like, but if you don't agree with those things and you still see the same person in office, like, why do you support him?
Right.
Because that's something I cannot get by when you're actively trying to take away rights from people like me, people who look like me, and other people who are already disenfranchised from generational things that this government has done on purpose to keep people at a certain level in society.
Yeah. I think what ends up happening, and this is just for me trying to like play not even devil's advocate because I'm not defending them, just trying to like understand why somebody would have the points of views that they do or decide to, support who they support. I hear a lot of people say two reasons. One of it is I think people, like you said earlier, they connect your ability to live in this country and the rights that you have to the wealth that you have as well. Or if you have money, you've been able to, get an education and you have a car and you have a house, roof over your head, you don't have to worry about feeding your family. They say you're fine. So they can't, outside of that realm, they can't imagine that there's another existing problem outside of that, right? And to me, that's so basic because, what happens to quality of life, right?
Right.
Like, why have people lost that? Why is it okay to accept bare minimum?
Yeah.
Why is it okay to say, well, I'm not racist. I have plenty of white friends who aren't racist. I have Black friends, Hispanic friends, Asian friends, and I have never judged somebody by the color of their skin. I don't see color. And to think that that is enough to make a judgment on the millions of other people who coexist with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So instead of going out there and trying to better understand, all people tend to do is, well, I haven't been exposed to that kind of diversity. I don't understand it. I can't imagine it. I can't conceptualize it. So it's not real. Yeah. If there's a shit ton of people saying the same thing, don't you think it's worth looking into? Or at least having a conversation? And I do the same thing with the other side. I mean, I've reached out. I think I mentioned this in my other podcast. I've made the effort to just better understand. I've gone to people who, from the beginning were on the conservative side of things, as I also kind of describe myself a little bit more liberal and just like you, not on like the political end of things. Just to better understand. And a lot of it, I think, is misinformation and not having the need to learn anything outside of your existence, if that makes any sense.
No, it completely does, because one of the things, like, for instance, example, I think it's Laura Ingraham. I could be wrong. She's one of the news correspondents for Fox News. When LeBron James did a show, excuse me, I don't know if he's doing an interview, he's doing a show, and he's talking about the state of the country, and he's talking about Trump, and he's basically, of course, I don't agree with everything that's going on, and that she was like, you need to, sorry, my brain just broke for a second. Okay. In a few words, she was like, you're an athlete.
Stay in your corner.
Stay in your corner, dribble your ball.
Yeah,
I remember. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to a couple of months ago, maybe it was like a month ago, Drew Brees was a quarterback for the Saints.
Yep.
Was basically voicing his support for Trump and, or whatever was going on. And he was getting a lot of flack for it. And she's like, oh, well, we need to respect his opinion. And I was like, why was that narrative completely opposite?
Yeah.
Is it because Drew Brees was white and LeBron James is not? Because I'm inclined to believe that, because I can't believe that Laura Ingraham was going to be like, I like football more than basketball, so I'm going to agree with this opinion, because that would be fucking
dumb.
Stupid.
And that's the thing. People are like, well, why is it always about race? Because that's the only thing that would make even a little bit of sense to explain these kinds of situations.
When people say, why is it always about race? The answer is because everything is about race.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence that Black and Spanish community schools are underfunded, that they are over-policed, that people who are incarcerated for crimes in those communities have longer sentences. And then they're like, well, why is the crime so high?
Yeah, people are like, well, why don't you guys do anything to fix your communities? I'm sorry. Are we choosing to live in these situations? Like, nobody wants to feel or live in an environment. Like, it's not something we choose. Like, I don't know. That frustrates me so much.
In 2012, I think I was still living, in 2012, I think I was still living in Metairie, which is kind of like a suburb of New Orleans. It's a more residential area. I was robbed at gunpoint leaving a work event.
Damn.
Not the first time I've been robbed.
Oh, okay.
And, here's my phone, here's my wallet, took everything. I mean, to be honest, they didn't really get much. I was not making that much money. And I was walking away. I walked back to where everyone, because it was like around Mardi Gras time, so parades are going on. And I went back. I walked maybe like 35 minutes back to where the group I was with. And I was like, listen, I just got robbed. Like, and then one of the first things, one of the people in that group, that they weren't in my group, but they were associated, they're like, well, there's probably some fucking black guy, right? And then in my head, I was like, New Orleans population is, I believe, majority people of color. He's like, man, I can't believe this shit. And to be honest, as upset as he's like, he can't believe that had just happened to me. And I was like, why not? If you're from here, you know, New Orleans has a super high crime rate. New Orleans also went through Katrina, which was also another shit show. But to be honest,
the minimal support that they received.
In my initial thoughts, of course I was upset. But at no point was I mad at this person for doing that. I was mad at whatever events in his life forced him to have to come to that, to do that.
Yeah.
Because no one does that just because they fucking want to.
I'm sure there are people, and I say this all the time, I'm sure there are criminals out there who are criminals because they get a thrill, like serial killers, right?
Yeah, of course.
They do that shit because it feels great or gives them power or sexual, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But a good majority, especially in these underdeveloped communities, a good majority of the time, these people are committing crimes out of necessity.
Yeah.
Not because they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, let's go ahead and, murder somebody, or
out
let's
of
go
necessity
ahead and steal.
Of a situation that was put in place by a system that is actively against them. Because like I said, there are more gun stores and liquor stores than there are libraries in these communities.
Yeah.
Than there are after school programs for kids, for tutoring.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are always quick to say that, well, I mean, I grew up poor and my family didn't have money and I went and got my education and I did it. And at this point, it costs money some people are too poor to get a job.
Yeah.
Some people are too poor to get to school.
If you don't have a car, do you have to take the bus? Do you take public transportation? Mm-hmm. All these things cost money. If the decision comes down to you're going to put food in your fridge for your children,
yep,
or gas in your car to go to work,
mm-hmm.
And trust me, my family for the longest time, my parents always lived check to check.
Yeah.
For a majority of my life, I lived check to check.
Mm-hmm.
Within the last year or so, I've kind of gained the most financial stability I've ever had in my life.
Yeah,
I don't always, do with it responsible things. I'm going to be honest. I just told you I bought an electric tea kettle. Like, did I need an electric tea kettle? No, I could have gone to Big Lots and bought a regular $10 tea kettle, but I went to Best Buy and bought a fucking one with LED lights in it. But I like tea and I like hot water fast. So, but being in that position, I still have never forgotten where I came from. If I see, and I think if anyone who really knows me, I don't like cocky people. They kind of are very off-putting to me because why is it like, look at me, look how great I am. I'm definitely not that person. I'm not a cocky person.
Yeah.
I struggle with a lot of issues with self-confidence, things that affect me in my current relationship right now. Mm-hmm. But if I see someone outside of CVS asking for money, and most of my jobs have always paid direct deposit, so I never have cash, really, ever.
Yeah.
I'll go in and I'll buy them like a sandwich and like a water or something.
Right.
If I see someone on the freeway, that's not. If I have money, I'll give it to them. I'll get them some food or something. And I'm not saying that to paint myself in this light of like, oh, look at this angelic savior who has come to bless us with his,
pub subs,
with his pub subs and his, odd knowledge of random things. But because I've been in that position,
right?
Not so much to the point where I was like, on the street asking for money. But I remember in 2009 when I moved back to Florida and my situation was kind of rocky and I didn't really have a place to live and I was sleeping in my car, a 2001 Mitsubishi Eclipse, a 2-door car that has no room in it whatsoever. That's AC does not work.
Damn. In Florida.
In the Florida fucking heat, you know? I remember debating whether putting gas in my car or to buy myself something to eat. Or my car got a flat tire and I can't go anywhere because I can't afford to put it in, you know, to put a new tire on.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how people can just be so heartless and be like, well, they just need to not be poor. That's kind of what I hear when people are like, why don't you just not be poor?
Yeah, the frustration. And you know what that kind of leads me to think, which might be ignorant of me to say, right? Because I don't know everything. I'm not going to pretend I do. I don't.
Oh, you don't?
I'm not a fucking genius.
You're a genius in your own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, genius doesn't have to be equated to academic intelligence, I feel.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, that makes me just think that maybe being white and poor isn't the same as being a person of color and poor.
Yeah.
By person of color, you know, Hispanics.
And coming
Blacks.
on the whole concept of like white privilege, I feel like people feel when that term is brought up of like, well, my life was hard. It's like, yes, that term doesn't mean that you couldn't have a hard life. To be honest, I can probably relate to more poor white people than I can rich Spanish people.
Mm-hmm.
That says something. and to no one is saying that your life can't be hard. That's not what that term means.
Yeah.
It means that you have to understand that systematically what you go through could be so much worse for someone else just because of the color of their skin. I had one of my coworkers, and this is the same coworker I've been referring to the whole time. I mean, it sucks because
he needs to go.
I told you I've been fired for bringing stuff up like this, and it sucks constantly being put in a position of either painting a target on my back or speaking up for things that I truly believe, I guess.
I get that.
But he's like, I don't know if this makes me racist or not, but there's this little black girl selling Girl Scout cookies. And I don't know, I didn't buy them from her, but when I came out, there was a white girl there and I bought them from her. I was like, yeah.
Racist.
That's racist. Like
100%.
100%. And I was like, why didn't you buy it? He's like, I don't know. I just didn't think she was cute. And I was like, I'm sorry?
Wow.
You mean to tell me, shouldn't the fact that you're buying Girl Scout cookies be because either A, you want them, B, you're doing it to help out whoever sells Girl Scouts? I'm be honest, I don't know. I don't really fuck with Girl Scout cookies like that. I'm just being real.
Missing out.
You can get the Thin Mints the fuck out of my face. That's just whack. Samosas and all that whack. Anyway, whatever. I have a long-standing feud with the cookie pushers. But you telling me that you gave money to one girl because she was white and not the other because she was black is the epitome of racism.
Yeah. 100%.
And then telling me, he's like, oh, well, you don't hear, and I remember he brought up the same topic. He was like, you don't hear Jewish people saying Jewish lives matter, and they went through the Holocaust.
Bro, don't get me started on Jewish people, okay? Jewish people had to literally exile themselves, build their own schools, build their own hospitals, their own police departments, fire departments, fucking stick to their own communities. They needed to do all that to have the same opportunity as everybody else in this country. And does that not tell you something?
Exactly. And I remember telling him, I was like, Black Lives Matter is not a statement saying about how black people are still enslaved. Mm-hmm. If you think that's what it's about, then you're completely missing the message.
Yeah.
You were completely missing the message. He's like, well, they're not slaves anymore. I was like, oh, so then everything is fine. It's like, oh, wait, you're not in chains anymore, and we're not forcing you for hundreds of years of free labor so that we can build our wealth. So you should be okay. That doesn't make sense.
They think that, like, because slavery, quote unquote, like, well, yeah, kind of disappeared in a sense, right, where it's like not legal anymore, that racism also doesn't exist anymore. Things don't just dissipate into the air that easily.
No.
And there's also like,
continues.
Yeah, there's also so even staying away from the financial hardship that comes after that, the residual effect of that, I think just as a black person, right, and I can't, obviously I'm not black, so I'm not like speaking for them, but I just trying to, be in their shoes, being in a country where they need to have this worry, not about being shot by a cop, not about being pulled over, but
100%.
even just about being judged because you are Black, or somebody looking at you a certain way because you are Black, or having to work. I've had conversations with one of my managers, and the mere fact of like you having to change the person that you are and speak a certain way for somebody to accept you.
Yeah.
For people to trust you, for people to add value to your existence. It's like Black people need to be at a certain level for them to be of any value to this country.
That's
crazy.
I do that.
Right.
I'm going to be honest, when I'm at work, I change how I speak. I change how I stand. I change what I say. Let's call and say, oh, hey, good morning. How's it going? This is George Ramirez, the maintenance technician at the building, and da-da-da. And I have to do that.
Yeah. Well, and some people are going to listen to this and say, well, that's just being professional. That's just, it's workplace, behave. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
I've been described various times by a wide variety of people as being quote unquote thuggish. I know I have a certain demeanor to myself. I dress a certain way. I really love shorts. Shorts are great. We live in fucking Florida. I don't ever want to wear pants because I'm already hot enough as it is.
Are we talking cargo shorts or are we talking basketball shorts?
No, I'm not wearing cargo shorts. I can say comfortably as a man who is now 29 years old, I have moved past the cargo shorts. I have now Adidas brand basketball shorts that I'm a huge fan of.
Nice.
I wear sneakers. I wear Jordans. I wear Vans. I really kind of just wear what I like.
Are we talking to work or just like on a day?
Oh, no. In general. No, I don't.
Okay.
I have a uniform for work.
Oh, okay.
I wear tees. I wear tank tops. I'll wear fitted hats. I have a certain, what people I know would describe, and I hate the term, as an urban appearance. I've stepped onto an elevator and a woman clutches her purse. And in my head I was like, listen, I'm not rich by any means, but I was like, there's a good possibility I have more money in my bank account than you do.
Right, bitch, relax.
Yeah.
That's so dumb. That's like, I've worked retail and people have always been like, it's usually the people who dress the fanciest or wear like their big ass coats who have the least money. No rich person who has money is going to walk around looking a certain way.
Listen, no one knows the address of my building. And even if they did, I wish you fucking would. But I don't lock my door.
Okay.
I live in a rise building. I live on, let's just say I live above the 20th floor is all I'm going to say. To get into the building, you have to talk to the front desk to even have elevator access. So even if you made it up to my apartment, here's the thing. If someone comes into my apartment, no one wants my broke boy shit. Okay? I could live in this building, probably, if I didn't get it through work, because I'm on call every other week, which is why our scheduling was a little bit, up in the air for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm actually on call right now, so luckily no one has called now that I fucking said that. Some, fucking water heater is going to explode. But the thing that's super insulting is, me and my girlfriend would live together. We could live in this building. Money would be a little bit tight.
But you could do it.
But we could live in this building. And, sometimes residents will find out I live in the building. Like, oh, you live in the building. Well, you must get a free apartment. Now, here's the thing. Regardless of if I do, why is your first immediate response to believe that the only way that I could live here is if they gave me a free apartment?
Yeah, it's stupid shit like that gets under my skin because it's very clearly happens, but I think it goes back to that same thing of like, wait, I still do it, as I said before, where I'll say, oh, that's gay, right? Because previously there was no need for me to think about the effects of me saying something like that. So people also don't have, quote unquote, the need to stop themselves from saying stupid shit like that.
Right.
When we do, right? It's just common courtesy at this point to think outside of yourself. And I don't think people do. So they don't see it as an issue.
Right.
And when it's pointed out, they're like, everybody says that, or that's just normal. Or I know plenty of people who, get free apartments, and that's why it's like, no, it's being conditioned. And I think
your first instinct was to believe that the only way that I could possibly live here is if I was living here for free, because you wouldn't believe that someone who looks like me, because here's the thing, on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm throwing out my trash, if I'm bringing recycling downstairs to the lobby, like I said, I'm in basketball shorts, probably wearing like a pair of Jordans or something, like a tank top with Snoop Dogg's face on it. I got my headphones in because I don't want people to fucking talk to me because I live in the building and I work in the building. So I see people and they're like, oh, hey, by the way, my fucking stove light is out. And I'm like, oh, does it look like I'm fucking working right now? Like, but, you know, and then they see me and, you know, of course I fucking like tattoos on my leg, tattoos on my arm. They kind of look at me a certain way. Like I don't quote unquote belong, whatever that fucking means. But it's like, dude, some of y'all don't own your car. Some of you don't have a house.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so
and
much
because I do, that does in no way, shape, or form give me more societal value than you. Mm-hmm. But I'm going by your metric of success. And if it's financial, then I should be meeting that metric of success that you have set. I don't agree with that metric. Like I said, I don't respect money.
Right.
I respect people. And I feel like if you ethically and morally align with some of the beliefs that I have, that being said, I'm still friends with some people who we might not agree on everything. But what matters to me is the intent. Mm-hmm. If I know that, I'm not mad at someone saying, oh, I didn't know that calling something gay when I meant that it was dumb or whatever was bad. I am not mad at that person because you did not know. What matters to me is if you acknowledge it, understand it, and then it's like, okay, what do I need to do to move forward and kind of progress and move myself? And I'm not saying, oh, everyone needs to be this high moral. Listen, I've done some shady stuff in my life.
Right.
The fact that I'm not in jail or dead is incredible to me. The fact that I wake up every day and I look out into a balcony that has a downtown view is incredible to me, because not long ago I was breaking into houses. I was breaking into people's cars to take things to sell so that I could have money.
Yeah.
You know, I was getting into fights. I've had people shoot at me. I've shot at people. And I'm in a very, very privileged position to not have to do those things anymore.
Yeah.
And my lifestyle being so completely different than what it was back then. I understand that, yes, some of it was hard work, but I do believe a lot of it is luck.
I was going to say, I was like, what did you do different to get there?
Well, when I first started out, you know, I was kind of getting into trouble. My dad brought me to New Orleans with him because he was working there at the time and we were still living in Florida. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, you know, you're not going to school. I had already finished school technically. You're not working. He's like, come with me. He's like, I could probably at least get you a job. And he got me a job as a groundskeeper. Yeah. I was basically picking up trash and cleaning up pools. Mm-hmm. And my check for 2 weeks would be $600.13. Exactly. Boom. 40 hours a week. So I was making like $300 a week. Mm-hmm. I was living with my parents.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have any expenses.
Right. That's good.
Like, this is incredible. My first paycheck, my mind exploded. I bought a brand new PlayStation 3. And this was like 2009. It wasn't even like when it first came out. No, I was late to the party.
Yeah.
Okay. And I slowly started learning more and more maintenance stuff through work. And then I started working on maintenance as opposed to just being a groundskeeper. And then once I started learning maintenance, I started learning AC stuff. So then I became an AC tech, got EPA certified. Like I said, I got kicked out of middle school. Yeah. I never went to high school.
Right.
Ever. Well, let me take that back. I went to high school to hang out with my friends. Okay, so quick aside, and it's only because I like to have levity. I like there to be a contrast. Okay, when things get too serious, I like to lighten it up a little bit and then get back to seriousness.
Yeah.
So, quick story, I promise. So, I don't know how pressed you are for time. I think we've been going for like about 2 hours or so.
That's cool. It's a good conversation. I was actually more stressed about wanting to continue the conversation, but it being really long for people listening. But at this point, like it's enjoyable. So fuck it.
This was around circa 2008 or so. I was technically done with high school, but I was too young to work. So I would do nothing but like go smoke weed and like stay up until 5 a.m. and sleep all day. Well, the highlight of my day was going to the bus stop when like Steph and, you know, Christian's brother would go and the rest of our friends, because we lived in the same area. So one day I got the bright idea. I was like, oh, I'll just go hang out with them at the school, you know? So I grabbed my backpack. I still had it, even though I was technically done with school, of course. I had my black JanSport, got on, put on my Dickie shorts and my colored polo and my Jordans, and, you know, had my iPod Nano in my pocket full of D4L and, you know. And then I got on the bus. Now, here's the thing. The bus driver was my same bus driver from middle school. He just did the high school route as well. For context, the middle school that we went to was Omni, and the high school was directly across the street. It was Spanish River, where Christian went to high school. They are literally across the street from one another. So he's like, what are you doing? He's like, he's like, I haven't seen you in forever. He's like, I was like, oh no, like it's cool. Like, you know, my mom and dad started driving me to school, which is why you haven't seen me. So their car's broken, so I need to ride to school. So he's like, okay. And I could tell he looked at me side eye.
Yeah, he was like
100%. He's like, this
here.
motherfucker, you full of shit, man. So I got on, of course, I'm having a good time. I was like, oh my God, George is on the bus, which was weird because I hadn't done it in like months, you know. And being on the bus was like my favorite thing about going to school. You know, listening to music, talking with friends, hanging around, joking around, get to the school. I walk into the school, of course, as normal. I get off on the bus. We're sitting in like the courtyard of Spanish River and hanging out with everybody. Oh, yeah. And then the bell rings. And then everyone starts getting up to go to class. And I get up and I'm like, okay, well, so here's the thing. I planned how to get there. At no point was like, how the fuck am I going to get back home? Now, my place from the high school was maybe like, probably exaggerating when I say 12 miles, but maybe about 12 miles. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just start walking. So, and I don't mind walking. If my phone is charged and I got comfortable shoes, I'll fucking walk my ass off. I'll walk for like, 2 hours, no problem.
Yeah.
And I started walking out of the school. And one of the security guards was like, hey, what are you doing? You can't leave. Of course, him thinking I'm a student because I'm wearing a fucking backpack.
Of course.
And then without even looking back, and I kind of just like shot him the deuce, while I was walking. I was like, nah, man, it's okay. I don't go here. Like, I don't go here. He's like, wait, what? You don't go here? Why are you here? And I'm like, nah, man, don't worry about it. And I just kept walking.
He's like, how the fuck did you get in this?
What the fuck is this? I like to think that he still thinks about this to this day. Like, he's sitting there
he's like,
having dinner with his wife. He's like, who was he?
He's like, puts his fork down and shit.
He looked like a high school student. He had a backpack on. What is he? Was he robbing someone? Was he like, what was going on? So, but yeah, that's just.
Wait, are they like officers like they are in New York?
No. This was here in Boca.
No. I know. I mean, was he like an officer or just like a school?
He was one of the school officers. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if they had like actual cops in schools in Florida. Like
I'll be honest, I did not turn around, so I do not know.
Oh yeah, that's right. You just shot him up.
I just shot him the deuce, and then
That's
and then
hilarious.
Kept walking. And then I was like, why did you think that the response, oh no, it's okay, I don't go here, was like the perfect way to explain the situation?
Listen,
luckily there was no follow-up questions or follow-up actions, and I just started my very convoluted journey back home that I actually ended up getting home at like 6 p.m. Even though school got out at like 2 or 3 because I walked home, and then I partially took a taxi with like $6.15 I had. And I told the cab driver when he got there, I was like, listen, man, when he got there, the thing was already at like $1.75. This is pre-Uber. So I was like, listen, as far as $6.15 will take me, I need you to take me that direction south. He's like, okay. He still dropped me off like 3 miles before my house. So I still had a bit of a walk ahead of myself. So
yeah, for the kids listening, taxis used to have this like counter on where they would pick you up and they would turn it on. And
do they not anymore?
I mean, I think in New York they still do because taxis are still a thing over there. I've never taken a taxi here.
Oh, really? I have 1-800-777-777.
Wait, is that a universal number? I'm pretty sure that's like in a commercial somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's serious. And they all smell the same.
They really do. They
really do?
They all make me nauseous. It's the strangest thing, especially the black ones. Those, the black taxis.
Okay, I was like, what do you mean?
No, like the black vehicles.
Those people, right? Is what you're saying.
I don't know what scent it is that they fucking like. Maybe it's like the new car smell, but even that makes me.
No, I think it's like whatever they use at the because taxis all convene at like an office, and there's like a garage there where they do tune-ups to check the tire pressure and all that. Whatever the fabricated thing they use to clean them, is I think it's universal, which is why they all smell the same. I've thrown up in a taxi. I've thrown up on the outside of a taxi before while the car was driving. Shout out to that dude because he was super cool. I gave him like a $20 tip.
Oh, nice.
One time I got into a taxi and I sat down on the sandwich because someone just left a fucking sandwich on the seat. And I was like, yo, there's like pickles on my ass. And like, what is happening? Sliced pickle. It wasn't a whole like dill, a whole spear,
So you weren't sexually assaulted by a pickle. That's good.
No. There was no, and of course, it's, that's fine.
But anyway, yes. So there's a counter, and as soon as you get in the cab, it starts ticking. So that it'll go, I think, by time, right?
I think it goes based off of either time or distance, whichever one it hits first. And I think it's incrementally 25 cents.
Okay.
I believe
so. Yeah, so it can rack up quite quickly.
When the taxi gets there, there's usually already a set amount on the counter. So for me in that particular experience, the cab got there and it was like $1.75 and I had maybe $6.10. So that's why I was kind of stressing because I was like, yo, a third of my money just went to just calling the cab here.
Right.
But yes, and then you go and then it just starts ticking because I feel like Uber and Lyft and all of those services have kind of diminished the cab industry because you see a lot of cab drivers switching over to Uber because I think they actually make better money anyway. And you don't really, I'm surprised at the amount of experiences I have with people like, I've never ridden a cab. I was like, yeah, you probably never had to.
That's true. Oh, well, that's very true, right? There's some places like Florida, you absolutely, I feel you need a car to get around. So maybe most people already have that luxury growing up to have a vehicle. I grew up in New York for a majority of my preteen adulthood.
Bacon, egg, and cheese.
Bacon, egg, and cheese, baby. So there are 3 staple sandwiches in New York now that we're on the subject.
All right. So we're migrating from South Florida sandwiches to New York sandwiches and go.
Okay, so bacon, egg, and cheese with
one word.
Salt, pepper, and ketchup.
Yeah,
we'll hit the spot every time.
First of all, if I meet someone and they tell me they do not put eggs on their ketchup, I'm slapping the shit out of you because
eggs on their ketchup.
I'm sorry, ketchup on their eggs.
I was gonna say, is it a whole bottle of ketchup and a little bit of egg?
It's delicious.
Okay,
there, I fucking said it. But okay,
it is
the bacon, egg, and cheese.
So okay, I'm not gonna lie. Usually, if it's a scrambled like an omelet, I don't put ketchup on it. But if it's a bacon, egg, and cheese, I absolutely need to. That's just a staple. That's how you need to do it. Make sure that you go to a bodega. Has to be like a corner store somewhere for it to be
Don't go to like Bryce and have him make you a brioche bacon, egg, and cheese.
Don't go to Panera for a bacon, egg, and cheese in New York and expect it to be magic because it's
Panera. Not. First of all, I'm surprised Panera's in fucking business in New York.
I think very rarely. It's very hard, I think, to find a Panera.
Maybe anyway, like Washington Square.
Yeah, somewhere real white. Okay, so the second option is going to be a chimi. Do you know what a chimi is?
I'm very familiar with the chimi.
Boy, so good. But you gotta go to very.
I haven't eaten in like 12 hours, so I am straight salivating right now. Like, I have the most gelatinous mouth right now.
Delicious. It's a game changer. You do need to go. I think it's a certain part of wheat, if I'm not mistaken. It's like get off of 120 something, 123rd. I don't know. You have to take the end of the Q train. I think. Wait, no, not the end of the Q train. The 7 train you have to take. So it's the purple line for people listening, and go to like 123rd, something like that. And then you just fucking get off and you go to the most Hispanic place you can find where you'll see like old men playing dominoes.
First you walk in that bitch. If you walk into the store and they are not playing bachata at like 7 a.m., The sandwich is
somewhere
going to
else.
be trash. But for those people who don't know, because it is what is it? It's the ground pork that does it.
Yeah.
It's
Some people make it with beef, which is strange to me, but
right. Do you like the cabbage?
I don't like cabbage outside of a chimi. Isn't that weird?
No, I can respect that. I kind of fuck with cabbage. Cabbage is a pretty
Where it's at.
good substitute for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I like it a lot. But it's just like the texture and the meat is so like it's got so much juice in it that it almost like runs down your face when you bite into it, and it's like the crisp bread and
it's an intimate experience.
Okay, so number two, the chimi.
Yeah, and number 3 is a chicken cutlet sandwich. Okay.
I knew this was coming.
Needs to be chicken cutlet. Okay.
Sometimes I go with
what?
Not veal, not pork. Chicken.
Exactly. It has to be chicken. A chicken cutlet sandwich. Okay. It needs to be. I'm either a cheddar or like a yellow American cheese girl. Depends on how I'm feeling that day. You got to throw some lettuce and some tomato on that bitch, and you need mayonnaise, and you need to make sure it's toasted so that when you bite into it, it's like super, almost like a panini.
The toast is crucial because of the nature and self of the chicken cutlet. It will fall apart if the bread is not firm, and now you have a soggy sandwich, and no one likes a soggy sandwich.
Make sure that chicken cutlet, like if you see the chicken cutlet is just sitting out when you go to the counter, and like you know how like delis have like a display of their food, be like throw that bitch in the fryer real quick.
Right.
Make sure it's hot.
Get it? Oh god, and then it soaks up the oil, and the oil kind of like flavors the bread,
like
and it's
crunchy
just. Listen, I only lived in New York for a very short amount of time, and then I moved back to South Florida, and then like 2 weeks after that, ended up moving back to New Orleans where my parents were because I was fucking broke as fuck. But food culture and bodega culture is so. Listen, I don't care what you say. No Michelin star restaurant will serve me food better than an old Hispanic man who left his family and is working there. Okay, straight
like 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 a.m. You could get a singular slice of cheesecake, probably like 2 blunt wraps, a sandwich, a grape soda, and walk out of there paying maybe $6, $7.
It's art.
It's incredible.
We're not deserving of it.
No.
It should be everywhere, but I don't think it would be as appreciated.
If they told me, hey, we're going to excommunicate Utah from the U.S., but you can have bodega-style sandwiches near you, I'm like, get it the fuck out of here. Get it? Utah, you can take Wisconsin, you can take all the square states that are in the middle of the country that, like, it's just mostly land for, like, cows and shit. And you know what it is? Also delis. Like delis where you can go in and order the sandwich and they slice up salami, the pepperoni.
I think they must like spit on it or something. But when you go to a deli like that, it just tastes so different.
It tastes like your hand does that thing where all your fingers connect. that classic Italian motion, like that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, and I know you're probably gonna want to stab me with a pencil from across wherever the fuck you're in, Fort Lauderdale and Delray right now. I almost think that those taste better than Publix subs. Publix subs don't hit hard for me, or at least as hard as a legitimate like deli sandwich from New York.
I can agree for certain things. If it's like the deli that I'm picturing, then yes. Yeah. Then for sure. Because
I'm sure it is.
The good thing about the deli is there's usually, and if it's in-house, that's perfect. If not, there's usually a bakery not too far from it where they get their bread. And I feel like a lot of times the bread is what makes it. So, and they have like the homemade, the sauces, the schmears, if you will, that they put on it. And it's like spicy mustard, like maybe like salami, a pepperoni, and just like Italian bread. It's fucking incredible. I'm so
if they're next to a train if the deli is next to a train station, it's gonna be hitting. If it looks like they haven't cleaned it in like a month, it's gonna be delicious.
Right. If you walk in and there's Dipset playing, like it's gonna be incredible. If there's a baby crying in the kitchen, it's gonna be fucking incredible because that baby right now is like
Yep.
flipping patties. You know, I know he's 2 years old and he doesn't speak, but he could grab that patty straight off of the grill and not burn his hands.
Yep. If that bodega has a cat, you know
If
you're in
it's
the
got
right
a
place.
cat, if Romeo Santos is in the background just serenading the shit out of like 2 70-year-old women who are talking about how, you know, they both fucked him in 88, like it's gonna be incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, my friends, is a snippet into the world of sandwiches in New York.
Yeah, number one
You're
sandwich
welcome.
podcast.
Yo, we've gone
Undefeated.
through so many different topics in the last 2 hours.
What
It's
is
beautiful.
the description going to be for this episode? Just out of curiosity, because I feel like we hit on breaking and entering, me breaking into a school to just hang out with my friends.
Mhm.
You know, obviously the state of the world is culturally, the presidency, sandwiches, and then we went back to sandwiches. It's like we started with sandwiches and ended with sandwiches, which would lead me to ask a question.
Sure.
Stephen K. from a Facebook group that I follow.
Okay.
Shout out to Steven. Proposed this question. I said this
Okay.
sandwich. Because I got a few questions for some people because I wanted to kind of add some, you know, a little bit of variety.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to see what your questions are. And mind you, I had no idea what we were going to talk about today.
Mhm.
So I had no idea we were going to bring up sandwiches. I had no idea that we were going to talk about anything that we did. We kind of just went with it, which I love. But Stephen K. asks, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Mhm.
I've seen this question float around before and really made me scratch my chin. I could say so myself. Is a hot dog a fucking sandwich?
Now, here's the thing. If it helps, the definition of a sandwich is an item of food. Okay?
Okay.
An item of food consisting of 2 pieces of bread with meat, cheese, or other fillings between them, eaten as a light meal.
A light meal? Bro,
A light meal.
fucking public sandwiches knock me out, bro. That's not a light meal.
I'm not gonna lie. I usually order 2 of them and then like eat one later that day. The same sandwich too. Like it's just 2 of them.
Just 2 of the same
Just 2 of the same sandwich.
Consistent.
Yeah.
I respect it. I want to say no, but then I start thinking about like chili cheese dogs, and like hot dogs with like sauerkraut in it.
Mm-hmm. Where do you come down on the hot dog?
What do you mean?
Are you a fan of it? I know some people, they don't really like it. I know for a lot of people, it's the toppings that really do it. It's not necessarily the dog itself.
Oh, I could eat a hot dog like alone. I don't even need a bun sometimes. I put hot dogs in like
What?
my omelets.
Okay, because let me tell you, the image that just came to my head is just you, like, for some reason, you went into the fridge, you took the pack of like Oscar Mayer's, you know, the one with the little Ziploc seal on the top.
Yep.
You, for some reason, brought it to your room. I don't know why you brought it to your room, but this is where I imagine that you do the majority of your hot dog eating. I didn't mean it to sound like that, I promise. And then I just imagined you ripping the Ziploc part off like a savage and then just kind of like biting into the pack as if it were a sandwich.
Damn, that's savage. That's savage. No, so hear me out. Okay, I grew up pretty well. I mean, I wasn't like poor, but it was me, my sister Grace, my mom, and her abusive ex-boyfriend. We all lived in a one bedroom, not like a 1-bedroom apartment. We rented a bedroom from some lady who lived in this apartment as well.
Yeah. Another feeling.
So I grew up off of bandeja paisa, hot dogs, and French fries. That's how I survived. And the occasional Chinese food that gave me food poisoning. But so I used to literally eat hot dogs raw. Okay. So I grew up just eating hot dogs like it was a staple of my life. So till this day, yeah, sometimes I take like a little bite of a hot dog before I cook it. And I know people are going to be like, oh, you're a nasty bitch. But like, that's just what I do. So I'm very fond of the hot dog, to answer your question.
Glizzy gobbler. But
Okay,
here's the thing. I would bite into the hot dog raw if
Okay.
it was that one Oscar Mayer one. I
Oscar
don't know if
Mayer
they still
has to
do
be.
it with the cheese filling.
Oh, no,
If it was just a regular, I know. It's trust me, a lot of things have gone right in my life. I haven't had one in a while. For me personally, If it's just like a regular hot dog, I don't think I'm really a fan of it.
Really?
If it's like a bratwurst or like a kielbasa, like a sausage. Now here's the thing.
That's different.
I'm really comfortable with myself. I can make this statement without any reservations. I fucking love sausage. Okay. I fucking love that shit. Like go to a Brazilian steakhouse and I dare you not to just sit there and fucking have one of every kind. And it's so incredible. It's like crisp. And I know they're like, oh, the majority of people put like all the excess shit. I don't give a shit. It's delicious. Okay. It's delicious. Bratwurst, knockwurst, all the worst. Chorizo
that are the best.
Is fucking delicious, and eggs. I dare someone to say different. When I have a hot dog, and I know it's gonna sound weird, I'm also a huge fan of IKEA. IKEA has the veggie dog, and the veggie dog plant-based. And I don't know how you feel about it because it does come with like a cabbage slaw on top of it, but it is delicious with spicy mustard. Picture cabbage from like a chimney and a veggie-based dog cooked.
Right.
And a veggie-based slaw that tasted almost like a hamburger. And it is so good. And I usually get two of them because they're like $1.50 a piece. Or maybe like 75 cents a piece.
Yeah, their food is like ridiculously cheap. And it's actually fucking delicious. Like sometimes,
they do because they charge me $80 for a fucking lamp.
Well, sometimes I would go to IKEA with my sister and we wouldn't really need anything, but we would go for the food court.
100%.
Yeah, it's the fucking best.
Have you had their breakfast?
No.
Okay, so let me put you on. Go at like 9 a.m.
Okay.
I know you live in Delray. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so IKEA is like maybe like a 20, 25-minute drive. It's not that far.
Not bad. Okay.
Go during breakfast. Their breakfast is maybe $2 or $3. And what you get are what's basically home fries, eggs. I think you get like another meat protein. And then they have these little waffles. Swedish waffles with a syrup.
Oh.
That is so good. It's a cheap and great tasting breakfast. It is amazing. I don't...
That sounds immaculate. I'm going to have to try that.
So
Christian's going to be like, let's go to Bagel Twins. I'm like, no, bitch. We're going to IKEA.
Yeah. Bagel Twins is good, though. I've been there.
It's fire. Yeah. It's a good... I mean, their potatoes aren't that great, I got to say. I like them from Bagels with Deli, but, it's to each their own. I was going to talk about, because you were mentioning their hot dog, and so in middle school, I lived in Pennsylvania for like 5 years when my father took custody of me and my sister. And along the lines, like my dad's like not a dad. So we ended up living with our friends. And then eventually I went to move into my sister's best friend's house. And they're like my adoptive, like redneck family. They are super Pennsylvania Dutch in some ways.
Boy.
So they, or like Ma would steam hot dogs. She would cut them up. She would steam hot dogs in water and cabbage. And it smelled like ass. So when you were explaining that hot dog, it really put me off.
Okay. That's fair.
And sauerkraut, too. It's just...
I think I kind of dig on sauerkraut. You say it smells like ass now. Here's the thing. I feel like Hispanics in general were like proponents of ass eating. So I don't know if that would help some people or like hurt. I don't know.
I think that if ass smelled like a genuine, like people's buttholes smelled like sauerkraut, more people would be eating ass.
That would be off-putting.
Really? I think
if it smelled like sauerkraut, because I find more people don't like sauerkraut compared to people that do.
Really? Well, maybe because I've been around more white people. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know your life.
Do white people like sauerkraut?
From most of my experiences, like growing up in Pennsylvania, absolutely.
Yeah, no, white people love sauerkraut and not seasoning their food, so I'm very oblivious to like what their whole cultural, thing is like. But I'm going off a tangent. But so my rebuttal to the original question is the hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah.
By definition, I'd have to disagree, only because it says between two pieces of bread, and a hot dog is one piece that you kind of just split open.
Slice.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd like to thank Stephen K. from the Facebook group for bringing up that salient point.
Thank you, sir, for giving us that gorgeous question.
That eventually became a thesis on integrity of culinary taste.
That's like, is water wet? There was a kid in my high school that would just go around.
Is water wet? I'm familiar with the argument. It is and is not. If that makes sense, because water makes things wet. So is it wet in nature? Well, it's a liquid, and liquids are wet in nature, so it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there you go, folks. In
That's
case you were asking yourself that same question.
if you had your checklist and you were thinking about the most important things that you needed to know the answers to, you can burn your checklist because there's no way that we did not cover everything on it. There's hot dogs, ass eating, you know, cab rides and
Politics,
how they
cab
smell,
rides.
politics,
Yep.
racial inequality,
Mental health.
mental health,
Yeah.
alcoholism,
Family dynamics.
sucking toes. We hit it all, you know.
Yeah. No, if somebody asked me, what would you want? Like, because this is, for me at least, my podcast is meant to be tailored around mental health as a priority, and then anything else that's uncomfortable after that. So if anybody asked me what my conversations would need to look like, this would be it.
Well,
1,000%.
Then you've done your job. Then you've absolutely done your job because, like I said in the beginning, I think it's great that there, at least in my circles, there seems to be more and more conversations happening about mental health, which we can joke, we can sit here and talk about, eating hot dogs in your room. We never forget what really matters, I think. And we can have fun with it at the same time. Not necessarily with things that are serious, because we're not obviously, I guess the message I want to get across is us talking about, bodega sandwiches shouldn't differ from the more serious topics we hit on.
Yeah.
And I feel like the whole schematic for this episode is kind of similar to like the schematic for like my life and how I navigate it, which is I can have the normal conversations. I can sit here and talk to you about real pressing issues, and I can voice opinions, and we can share and we can learn from one another.
Yeah.
And then I always try to have that contrast so where I can joke about things that are, worth joking about. Obviously, I'm not talking about joking about any of the serious stuff that we talked about, because at the end of the day, I find a lot of stuff, it is serious and it's not to be made fun of, but having other things that you can have at the same time, because I don't want to be grim all the time.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in that place all the time. I want to have that almost that optimistic light at the end of the tunnel. Even though it might not always look that way, I navigate the best I can. And I really do try to not push that, because it sounds bad. I try to express that to other people in hopes that they, kind of see that and say, maybe I could as well, because I truly believe at the end of the day, nothing bad can come from anyone understanding more about someone else or being empathetic towards someone else. I truly, truly believe that. And yeah, that's really it. Understand one another, love one another. Don't be a fucking racist.
Make good choices. Listen, I'm not perfect, right? I do a lot of fucked up shit. I have very dark humor. Some people may not agree with me. As I said, the way I express myself sometimes isn't the right way, and it's something I'm conscious of, and I'm working on it. And I think ultimately for me, even when I do fuck up, and all these conversations are recorded and they'll live on the internet forever and ever, and that's okay with me, because that's what like being a human being is, right? Just being open and honest and making mistakes and learning from them, while still being able to think outside of yourself. Like I'm very well aware of my own internal issues, but I think that one of the incredible joys of life is being able to sit with people who agree or don't agree with you, and host a dialogue and understand each other better, or find commonality, or maybe educate yourself on things that you didn't know previously. I think that's a privilege in itself that I don't think we take advantage of as much, partly because some of us don't have the opportunity to, and some of us because we choose not to. So I think for me, the most important thing is take the time to add or focus on your quality of life. And I think having these conversations will add to it, because it'll help you pull yourself outside of yourself. And especially in a year like 2020, I think we all need that at some point in one way or another. And just have fun, right? Make your jokes and have a good time and eat your hot dogs. And
eat your hot dogs in the dark. I don't know why it's in the dark now. We're progressively going.
It just keeps getting worse.
It's like, wow.
It's getting intense. It's getting intense. But yeah, no, seriously, thank you for sitting and taking the time to do this with me. I always appreciate when somebody's able to like open up and fuck around and have a good conversation with me.
Oh, of course,
I like to have,
you.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to have the good times, but I think having serious conversations are also super important. So this is really dope. Is there anything that you want to share with the people listening now that we've kind of finished this bad boy off?
I know we've hit on it a few times, but just step outside of yourself and try to have that extra level of understanding for other people and what they're going through. At the end of the day, I feel like we all benefit from each other prospering.
Yeah.
I don't think of it as a me versus them mentality, like if you raise a minimum wage, there's more money going into the economy, which helps everyone, things like that. I really do believe that people just need to step outside of their fears as well. I feel like things like racism and bigotry stem from fear. There has to be some sort of fear there, because if you're trying to keep things the way they are, it's because of a reason. And it's because maybe you're afraid of losing something or losing your position in life. But I promise that nothing bad comes from more understanding.
Yeah.
I obviously don't have all the answers. And I really wish that, I'm not the shining example for morality or ethics by any means. But I feel like if everyone was a little bit more in line with that way of thinking, that we really would be like a great country. It's difficult because, country, you're Colombian, I'm Salvadoran. It's easy to relate to one another because you're from that country, each other's cultures. We don't have a culture here, a shared culture. We all have different experiences. And I think that's what makes that great, is the fact that we can kind of all take the parts from all of our cultures, blend them together into like this melting pot. And I know that's like a term that's always thrown around when describing America, but I really think that this country at its best is when it takes, all the positive things from all these cultures and kind of shares that with the world.
Yeah.
A more open experience, a more involved experience with one another. Like I said, just fucking love each other. Like, it's dumb. Stop being fucking dumb.
Yeah, we're all brought to this planet for a fucking reason. Like, we all breathe and eat and sleep and we bleed the same. So just think of that before you pass judgment, right? Like, somebody is on this planet for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? So just like you have purpose, somebody who doesn't look like you does too, right?
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer, at least how I've gotten through life, is everything happens for a reason. Think that what we're all going through at this very moment is happening for a reason. And if there's one thing that I want people to almost try to do, is have a fucking conversation, okay?
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about the extreme. Don't worry about the media. Stop watching the news. Stop going to the same news outlet for the same information that you've been fed your entire life. Go and make the effort to speak to somebody who doesn't agree with you and try to have that conversation, because I bet you that a majority of us are more in the middle of things. We're not as extreme as the media makes it seem. So have
You'd be surprised how many things we have in common. But not only that, not only just having a conversation, but having a conversation with the intent of listening and understanding.
Yeah.
Because I feel a lot of times when people are like, oh, I just want to have a conversation. It's like, okay, well, there's a difference between wanting to have a conversation and then trying to defend your values. Because I feel like you almost have to drop that guard when you want to have an open conversation, because I'm willing to admit things in my upbringing, things in our culture are flawed. Things in our country are flawed. And I think that we have to hold ourselves to that higher standard, because if not, why would I just sit idly by when I see that things could be better? Things can always be better. That's why they're like, oh, make America great again. And I was like, yeah, but what you're preaching and what you're saying are two different things, because I feel like these things are regressing us. And, just that whole thing of having understanding and the willingness to listen and not shoot bullet points at someone, because that's not a conversation.
Yeah.
That's you, trying to send your beliefs to someone else for the sake of wanting them to kind of like come over to your side. I don't ever really voice my opinions to someone because I'm like, I need them to believe what I do. It's like, no, I need you to kind of understand where other people are coming from so that you can come to that conclusion and make your own decision.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what, what I believe is, say what you mean and mean what you say. And when you listen to people, don't just hear them. Listen to them, comprehend what they're saying, and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay not 100%. To, right? Because again, the point of the conversation isn't a debate. Like, we're not trying to get you onto our side by speaking on the things that we believe. But it's okay to receive information, sit with it, and say, you know what? That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me look into this a little bit more. And if you do end up at some point saying, you know what? Yeah, I kind of changed my mind a little. That's totally fine. That doesn't make you weak.
There are things that I've been completely wrong about. And I can acknowledge that, but I feel like people don't want to acknowledge that they're wrong, or they don't want to change because they're so used to what they're doing. And the thing is, we have to move past that. We have to move past our own self-confidence, but we have to move past our own ego. We have to move behind our own, defense mechanisms that we use to protect ourselves, because you're so begrudging to like hold on to what you believe. And even though it might not be the right or wrong thing, that I feel like just losing that open-mindedness really just messes things up. It really does. Like I said, I don't think anything bad comes from more empathy.
Yeah. You just close yourself off to experiences that you didn't know you need.
And I think that there has to be some sort of reflective behavior there of like, why is it that when someone says something like Black Lives Matter, why is it that you get defensive?
Yeah. Why
is it that you feel how you feel that way when you see someone kneeling during the anthem, which, to be honest, the anthem kind of sucks. It's a boring ass song. So that shit does not slap. It's funny. I sent my sister a thing on Instagram the other day. Shout out to her. Did you, I don't know what your experience is. Did you ever listen to Good Charlotte?
Yeah.
Okay. So they had the song, The Anthem. Right. So it was like a comparison of the two. It's like, oh, the national anthem written by a slave owner, boring as fuck. This shit does not slap. It's like, oh, the anthem by Good Charlotte. Shit's a fucking classic. Shit fucking bombs, not written by slave owners. But yeah, to me, it seems like the simplest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's like, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard? Like, it's almost childish to me sometimes. It's like, I don't like these people because they look different. I was like, really? That's it? That's really it?
Yeah, there has to be something really, really deeply, deeply rooted, right? And for you to never have the need to question it, which is kind of what was my point before, right? Like, if you live, let's say, in like a small ass town in Utah, and you're predominantly white, your education has always been surrounded by white folks, and you go to work and you hear the same shit, and your parents have certain beliefs, and that's all you've heard your whole life, and you don't really have a need to kind of step outside of that, then maybe I could be like, okay, I can kind of see why you wouldn't, but at the same time, it's like, we have the internet now, right? Kids get phones at the age of like 10 now.
We have all of the world's knowledge in our pockets, and we do the dumbest things with it.
I know. We have so much potential as a country, and I think we get carried away with the dumbest shit that just keeps us from growing.
Yeah.
We're worried about people with a skin color that, like, and race is like a social structure that was like invented. Same thing with like gender is a little bit different because like biology, supports it, whatever. But like the labels of like male and female, like somebody literally woke up one day and was like, if you have titties and you have a vagina, like you're a female. You know what I'm saying? So like it's just
Right.
social classes too, like all of that. It's meant to keep you separated. And while
I almost feel like outdated.
almost, if the intent was to like keep people organized or keep them from banding together in fear of like overthrowing the government, like that just is so outdated. You know what I mean? Like we were willingly voting for somebody, we were willingly accepting a democratic, like not democratic, what do you call it? I'm at a loss for words. Yeah, I guess it would be a democracy. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. And we're shooting for that, right? And we're the ones who are in charge of electing those people. I think the fear should be less of like focusing on what we do to like overthrow our government, or I don't know. I think there's so many layers to it too, where people also are concerned about their own individual rights and how those can be affected, and without thinking of the bigger picture, but also stating that, the will of the country or whatever, the health of integrity of the United States is, what the focal point is. Start in your families, man. Start with your kids. Start with your communities. The only thing I can say is like start small. Don't think about something so big, right? Don't think about conspiracy theories. Look at internally within your own home first and 100%. Question shit. You know what I mean? Have those conversations. My mom, prejudiced as fuck. She, as a Hispanic, and I want to say that a lot of Latinos experience this in their homes. We see it all the time where our parents are like, even towards Black people, right? Colorism is a very real thing in South 100%. America. So things like that are also very important to also better understand how you can do your part. Right? Yeah. So it's just having a conversation. Yeah. Communication is huge.
And you're not going to end racism,
right?
Like by just talking. Like for instance, homophobia, I feel like, is a big thing in a lot of Spanish households.
Yeah,
I've seen it in my own. I've seen my part, and I've spoken to my dad about it, my mom about it. Not so much my dad, but I was like, hey, and it really is that thing of like trying to break someone out of their habits.
Yeah.
But I always start the conversation with, I'm just letting you know, I'm not trying to like reprimand you or anything like that. Like I'm trying to kind of just give you the perspective to understand why things are how they are, and maybe how they could be a little bit different, and that would not affect you in a negative way whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, I've called my dad out on stuff. I've called certain family members of mine out on stuff, because that's like you said, that's where it starts. It starts in the home. Like it's easy to go on Instagram and be like, oh, Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Super easy to just post a hashtag. It's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
But to actually
Black square.
Yeah, to address, and what the overall message is, I 100% agree with. But it's like, if you're doing that for a societal thing, like to just be like, oh, I did it. You see, everyone, I'm with everyone else. I did it.
Yeah.
But the action, I feel, is what matters. And things like that, I've had to address with my own family as well. And luckily, it has been a process. I feel like there has been somewhat progress. Like I said, it's not going to be overnight, but the important thing is that consistency and just addressing the things that, we could be always doing better on, things that I'm reflective on myself that I could be doing better on. But like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but something is better than nothing. And I will always care about people more than I do businesses. I will always care about people more than I do property. I will always care about people more than I do about money. That's just how I am. And I think that if everyone were just a little bit more inclined to remember that you're also a person, and that you in no way, shape, or form would want those things to happen to you. And if what you need to go through is say, oh, well, how would I feel? Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, it's also weird because you're never going to experience the same things that other people experience, because of things like difference of religion, difference of race, different of, just the complexity of your skin, whether the complexion of your skin, whether you're lighter skin, darker tones and all that.
But I think making the effort as if, like, trying to maintain that mentality, like, as if it did affect you, would be very useful, right? Because at least in that sense, you're trying to empathize with somebody, even if you don't fully understand it. I always say, I think people start to care about shit once it hits home. And
100%.
Once some shit hits,
sometimes then not even. Trust me,
true.
I've seen some shit hit at home, and But yes, it is more likely for someone to kind of be open-minded to it,
resonate with it
when it comes into their home and stuff. So
I think ultimately that's the fear, right? Protecting their own. So what I did want to kind of touch on before we did actually end the pod is I know that you're in the works of putting something together. Do you want to mention that at all?
Sure. It is still very much in its infancy. I can say this honestly and openly, and I don't mean this, just because it's me and you that are speaking. You kind of inspired me to kind of get my passion project going. I'd wanted to do podcasts for the longest time because, I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. It's usually my schedule, and I'm on call for after hours things. 98% of the time that I'm at work, I have headphones in. I have like one of my AirPods in or something.
Yeah.
And I'm always listening. I listen to a bunch of different podcasts, which I will throw some of those out there. If any of the listeners want to listen to, I highly recommend it. And I love being a part of conversations like that. And I wanted to kind of host my own conversations. I think I'm going to try to shoot for so the first one that I had in mind, and I actually started setting it up when I was still living in New Orleans with a really good friend of mine named Dylan. Yeah. We wanted to do a gaming podcast together because me and him are a huge fan of video games. And we wanted to talk about how our love for this kind of affects our lives and how it's such an integrated part of our lives. It really is and hopefully, people who necessarily aren't even into games can listen to it and be like, wow, the video games I feel have evolved so much from what people think that they used to be. It's not just Pong. It's not just, Street Fighter anymore. And no, these are really impactful things that can have positive and negative experiences in your life, like watching a movie or falling in love with your favorite music album.
Yeah. There's definitely a stigma behind video games, I feel.
Yeah. I'd be inclined to agree. And of course I'm probably a little bit biased, but I definitely want to do something with that. I recorded kind of preliminary introductory episode. It's just me by myself kind of explaining a very quick and brief the episode I think came in at right in an hour, maybe 59 minutes, which is really cool because I reached out to this guy on YouTube. His YouTube channel, I believe, is Smooth McGroove. If you guys haven't heard of this guy or seen him, you have to check this guy out. He's incredible. He's an acapella artist, but he does acapella versions of video game songs. And it is great. A few years ago, I reached out to him. I was like, listen, I love this one song in particular. I'm thinking about doing this podcast. Can I use it to do the podcast? Of course, you'll be accredited and all that. And he was like, yeah, dude, go ahead. So, and that was a few years ago. So now that I'm kind of slowly starting to do it, I got in there and, did what I needed to do with it to kind of make it the intro for the show. So I eventually want to have some guests on and, have topics and things like that, maybe particular games or particular consoles, things like that, just because it's the gaming is probably one of my biggest passions. It's one of the things that I definitively know. It's if you ask me what's the one thing you know a lot about, it's probably I know a lot about video games. And more than on a surface level, yeah, man, I love playing Call of Duty. It's no, I play Call of Duty, but I play a lot of different games. I play puzzle games, rhythm games, story games. Just beat The Last of Us 2, and then I fucking cried 3 times while I played it, and then I bought a big ass statue of one of the characters, So
listen, I think if it's video games, if it's cooking, if it's about fucking number 2 lead pencils, if there's a passion behind it, there's going to be a group of people who appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
there's nothing more beautiful than listening to somebody speak about something they're passionate about. So,
and that's why, I think that's why I chose that, because I knew. And then the other one I was thinking about doing was more kind of similar to your format, minus the mental health, the focus on mental health, and uncomfortable conversations, where it's just a conversational show with just random. Let's talk about why is a hot dog a sandwich. Let's talk about blank. Let's talk about whatever. Let's have a conversation.
Just to get people to think about something other than
and not even so seriously let's get you to think. No, it's come sit with us, come laugh with us. Come take a
Breath
little
of
bit of
fresh
a
air.
breather from everything else going on. And, you know, we can have those conversations as well. There's not, you know, they don't have to be separate from one another.
Right.
But I'm currently in the works for that. So, which would lead me to ask you, where can people find you if you want to be found?
Yes, if I want to be found. Okay, so a couple
What's your
different
address?
places.
What's your social security number?
Okay, so you guys, I have a website. It's the Witty Titty Podcast.com. You can find my RSS feed on there. You'll find a little bit about me on there. It kind of like the go-to place if you know you don't have access to either iTunes or Spotify, which leads me to my second point: iTunes and Spotify. You can find me under the Witty Titty Podcast. I also have an Instagram page, the Witty Titty Podcast as well. I'm very consistent with that. And I'm in the works of trying to get these videos up to YouTube. I am one, a procrastinator, and two, extremely lazy. So I'm trying to trying to find the best way to record my sessions without it being a tremendous amount of work. But I'm sure it's going to be anyway. But either way, I'm in the works of doing that. So I'm going to put a channel up eventually because I also want to open up a platform where if people are listening, they have a place where they can comment stuff or ask questions easily without needing to reference my email. So that's
what email is that?
It's Whitney at the WittyTittyPodcast.com.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. When you first, you know, had reached out, I think you had made like a post on Instagram or Facebook or something, and it's so funny because we've been talking for like I think almost like 3 hours now, if not more.
Yeah.
And I've hung out with you twice.
Yeah, for real.
I've hung out with you a total of 2 times, maybe a third, possibly third, but
like
I don't
2.5.
Yeah, I don't think it's much more than that. But when I saw what you're doing, you know, I was very excited. You know, the conversations that you've been having, the previous episodes, you know, I think it's great. I think we need more voices. I'm not gonna, you know, more voices, and of course, it makes me extra excited to see more, you know, Hispanic Americans getting out there and being on the forefront of those conversations. You know, kind of like if we want to help each other, we need to be the ones on the forefront of those conversations. And I'm just so glad that I could really take this time today and be a part of this, because I really do feel that this is something really great, and it's going to be of service to so many people, even if you're just having a bad day and you listen to 2 people talking about, you know, bacon, egg, and cheese, you know, and if it just brought you out of that funk, even if it was for a moment, then that I think means a lot to someone, because it does to me. When I'm listening to a podcast, I'm having a bad day at work or something, and, you know, someone makes a joke about something, and oh, that's funny, you know, and it for that temporary moment, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's really great. Do you think, or have you seen any sort of anything that would lead you to believe that, you know, you'd reach out to other podcasting services, maybe like a Stitcher or a Pocket Cast, or how is that? Or are you primarily like Spotify, iTunes, and I forgot what the other one was, the RSS feed on your website, I believe.
Yeah, so I actually have a Simplecast account. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been figuring this out as I went.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? I recorded 2 hours of audio the other day that it turns out I wasn't recording shit. So
what?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that later. But yeah,
Damn.
The first run I recorded for 2 hours and realized, nope.
Wasn't recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The red light means record, right? No, it turns out on the Yeti X microphone, the red light means it's muted.
when you click the button down, that's hilarious.
It's muted.
Definitely done that before.
I was like, oh, it's red. Good. Red means go. In all aspects of life, red means go.
Yeah, for real.
Stoplights.
Anyway, so no, I appreciate your support with doing this, and again, taking the time to actually have a conversation with me. And I'm excited to see your child grow that, you know, you've said you've been wanting to do this for a while, and not to pressure you into actually making it happen, but I think that when you do, I think it's going to be incredible, and I think it'll be awesome. And I think a lot of people out there will really, really enjoy the knowledge that you have to share with people. And you'll build a safe place for people who have that same passion to feel comfortable and feel welcomed. And yeah, I'm just excited because I've genuinely enjoyed having this 3-hour-long conversation with you. And
100%. Same.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, which is I'm probably like in the wrong place to be doing this, but I hate talking on the phone with people. But this is something different for me. But you know, sitting here and talking to you, I think has been incredibly enjoyable. So thank you so much.
I mean, we're doing this over Zoom because of COVID restrictions and all that. And I think just in terms of both of our schedules, it was easier to record remotely.
Yeah.
Now that I even know recording remotely on Zoom is an option, because you just taught me that. Because for the most part, I was like, how the fuck am I going to get people to my house to record this goddamn show? But I will be reaching out to some people. Hopefully they're willing to record something for my project as well. And I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form to distract from your light, because this is really about this is definitely about you and the work that you've been doing. And the proof is in the pudding. I've listened to the first, or whatever amount of episodes is out, I've listened to. So, and some of them more than once. The one I listened to you with Christian, I listened to twice, because, you know, like I said, he's a very dear friend of mine. And just hearing him, and now I know things about him that I did not know before. And look what happened. I have another level of understanding and appreciation for him. And please, if you're out there, if you're listening to this, like, share it, like it, rate it. I know Spotify has like sections where you can like something or share it. Because I'm a huge fan of conversations happening, whether they have to be uncomfortable or not, you know. And even if they are uncomfortable, well, I think that's the point.
Yeah,
I think that's the point. If it's uncomfortable, it's for a reason. Yeah, and you know, I'm like I said, I'm super thrilled that I could be a part of it. If I do something, you know, in the near future, hopefully, I would of course love to have you on, in your expertise, your opinions, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, hot dog recipes, you know, everything. So
got you anytime.
Hopefully in the future, if you ever need another person to do something, you feel like you can reach out to me, because I would happily do this again with you. That's probably like one of the quickest 3 hours of my life. I have had to pee like since we were like 17 minutes into the show. I think it's like over 3 hours now, and I'm fucking hungry. So I think on that note, I think that's a pretty good jumping off point.
Oh yeah, go ahead and enjoy yourself. You know, a hot dog or a sub or something.
Yeah, a sub.
Right,
it's funny because I actually got, and I don't mean to extend it any longer. It has to be. It's funny. Like 5 minutes ago, I got an emergency call because I'm on call this week for someone's fridge that's not working. So somewhere out there in the building, the resident for Penthouse 3 is currently waiting for me to show up. But I will be damned if the people do not know, you know, about good sandwiches. You know, I think that's the
it's a hot commodity.
It's a hot commodity. Oh god, I want to sandwich so much. Okay, so I will let you go. Everyone out there listening, please like, share, rate it, send it to your family, send it to your friends, send it to yourself. I'm sure somewhere there's an algorithm that it judges how much something is shared. And reach out to Whitney, thank her for what she's doing, send her money. You know, what's your Venmo? What's your Cash App?
Not there yet.
Okay, cool. You guys feel free to subscribe to my OnlyFans. It's mostly feet pics right now. So feel free to do that. And thank you. I look forward to the future and what it holds for you.
Thanks, man. All right, bitches. Thanks for listening for this while. I appreciate it. And hope you guys have a great day.
Wonderful Sunday. No, what day is today?
It's Saturday.
I don't fucking know. Jesus, I'm running like 4 hours of sleep.
Okay, bye.
Bye.